Well, hello, ladies. I got two beautiful women on stage with me. How are you, Bootsy and Swamp Rose?
Hello.
I'm doing awesome tonight. Thank you for having me back on the panel. And it's such a pleasure to be here with Boots tonight, too.
It's so good that you're here too. I'm so see me?
Yep. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm having a little thing with my computer. Okay. Hi. It's very nice to meet you. I am excited about this. Very different perspectives, and I think that there's a lot to say. Excited about it.
Most definitely. I'm glad to have both of you beautiful ladies on with me today. So for everybody that's in the chat, and I'll show myself for a second. Hi.
Hi.
I'm cutting in and out for some reason into my background today. It's really cool. See, I'm here 1 minute, gone the next. But I'm definitely excited to be working with both of you. Like I stated, we're going to have a convict side of things over here, the criminal mind, but then we got a little bit of a law background with common sense. So we're going to be able to speak our mind, share our feelings and our thoughts, because we've got a lot of things to discuss, from court docs to also the hot topics of the case that are floating through the air, and they're important, and they really need to be seen and talked about. But the one thing, Boots, that you and I have talked behind the scenes, and so have Swamp and I, that's so important is the actual perception and the view on the justice system and what's happening in this case. That's why I'm excited to really have you here with Swamp and I today, because I think you could bring a lot to that table. So I'm going to give you the floor, Boots, to kind of share a piece of you with our crowd, because we have both Swamp's crowd with us today. We have my crowd, and of course, we're with you as well. So, take it away.
Okay. First of all, I have. Okay, hold on. Oh shoot! Tell me if it changes. I'm having an issue.
Okay, what are we trying
I guess
to
not.
do?
Maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm not. I can't. I can only see you in one place. Is that okay? Like, is it supposed to be like that? I've never dual streamed before, so.
I think you're only supposed to see me in one place. I shouldn't be at two places, right, Swamp? You tell me, Swamp, what am I supposed to be?
Can you see everybody's phone? I can only see it. Like, I have my phone right here, but I don't see it on my channel, and I'm not getting any.
I'll go check out your.
Thank you.
Are you trying to pull up a document, or what are you trying to
But no, but if I need to, it's going to be.
Yeah, if you need to, let me know, and I'll bring it right up, and I'll share it right onto the screen for it.
Okay. I mean, I have them all here. Hold on one second. Let me, my streamer, give me one moment. I'm really sorry. Technical difficulties.
No problem.
We've all been here. We've all.
I mean, I can always just do it from my.
Murphy's Law. Whenever you start
yes.
a live stream, the glitches come out.
As a matter of fact, you were okay. Oh, got it. Hold on.
Okay.
You know, I had created a different one like last night, and then I changed it. So I think, hold on, this should put us all together. Because I can't. Okay, it's all good. All right. Sorry. Thank you. I can't see any of my comments. That's the only thing.
Oh, I'll keep an eye on the comments for you. And you looks like you've got some good mods on your channel too on top of it. So
I have amazing mods. Okay, so and for my my channel, just so you know, I can't see chat right now. So mods, you're amazing. Please, thank you.
You should be able to click over to live chat. If you go onto live chat, you should be able to see your chat as well, but maybe not. That's why I always have dual screens, because I have one up on YouTube to where I can see chat when I also have the main one. While you're kind of looking at that, I just want to take a brief moment too. I want to say hello to everybody in the chat. It's great to see all of you. Swamp and I obviously had an amazing live last night. Many of you were able to join us, so I'm glad to have them back. I'm not sure. Are we frozen, Swamp?
No, I'm just listening to you. I think we're good. I mean, it was interesting. We had so much conversation last night, and I think the live stream could have gone for another 2 hours. And I mean, I even have so much more to talk about tonight. It's just, we just keep getting bombshell after bombshell in this case. And I have things to talk about the players tonight, about the 911 call tonight, talk a little bit about Jack D, talk a little bit about Murphy. And I can't wait to hear what we have from the legal aspect of this too. I was kind of asking Boots and AR what the theme of the live stream is when we were backstage talking, and we're going to take it from all angles and try and give you all perspectives tonight, both from the legal side, the common side, and the media side. Trying to
Now,
feel that.
there she is. I just wanted to make sure you weren't frozen, Boots. Are you still with
No,
us?
I am, but that's okay. I'm trying to, yeah, I'm having a problem. It's okay though.
Why don't we do this while you and I work on your little
Sure.
Swamp? Why don't you lead us in with the first talking point that you may have, and then as we get through yours, we'll transition Boots over to a good talking point that you would like to jump into.
That
We'll
sounds
just kind of
amazing.
bounce between the two of you, and we'll cover as much as we can. How's that?
Sounds good. I'm actually really excited. You guys are giving me the floor. So I just want to tell the audience, so I wasn't the primary person tonight. So if my topics seem a little bit off, it's because, you know, I'm pulling out the things that I feel were the most interesting today I was reading about. I'm going to start with the number one thing that I haven't heard before that was brought to me by one of my researchers, Mikey. Thank you, Mikey, for this story. And it really has been reiterated in the last 24 hours via Megyn Kelly and Howard Bloom. Oh, we lost Boots.
She'll be back. I'll bring her back up when she comes back.
So I didn't know if the live chat knew this, and I don't know if the audience knows this, but this is the first time hearing. It sounds like allegedly what's being said on mainstream media, I mean, huge platforms, is that, in AR, you tell me if I got this story right, it appears Bryan Kohberger's sister might be writing a book.
This is new information to me as well. It got brought up to me today, and I've already began feeling out into this situation. And Boots, just hang in there. It's going to be all right, Boots. I promise. But
There we go. I got it, I think. Okay.
awesome. Considering, as you know, Swamp and Boots, maybe you don't know, I do kind of have information in regards to the Kohbergers and the Kohberger family, and I do speak with people with direct knowledge of what's going on. I had never heard anything about a book being written as of yet, so that's new news to me. It's actually surprising to me. Almost frustrating that these types of things would be leaked again right now prior to us moving into some very important hearings within the courtroom. This is just a sad time for somebody to try to create a division between the defendant and his own family. That's actually sickening to me, because let's just set Bryan Kohberger aside as a defendant for a minute and just literally think about the Kohberger family.
Mm-hmm.
This was a shockwave to them from the very beginning back in Pennsylvania when their home gets raided in a completely horrible way. So now I've got two of them.
I know. I'm on yours, not mine.
Okay. So the division of this started very early with the Kohbergers, and then it took a little bit of a break, but now here we are again, and this rumor has to be circulated with no founding, and this is again Howard Bloom. This is again stemming from Howard Bloom. Oh, which just makes it even more frustrating, Swamp. It's just more frustrating.
And here's the kicker of all of this, and why I feel like people who may or may not, you know, whether this is the truth or not, there's a timing issue here, and people with experience, because here's the thing is, let's just say this rumor is false. By the time she can answer for it, it's long been forgotten that this was a headline or even something that could influence people, because if she is, by what they were saying in this very largely circulated interview yesterday, is that she would be placed under the gag order. So either way, Bryan Kohberger's sister can't answer to these allegations, and it's not a publisher coming out. It's people with inside knowledge. And I think that the true crime community, you know, we all make our decisions about who we respect, who we want to listen to. But you know what? It's time for the common public to start looking at mainstream media and saying, you know what, you broke my trust here. I'm not going to listen to you, looking at some of this stuff as rumor and not as sourced information the way that they do. Because it just sounds like a little sewing circle. I mean, we got Howard Bloom and Megyn Kelly coming up in their matching cashmere sweaters. And I just, get your thoughts. Sorry.
Now I'm having a problem here. I'm so sorry, you guys.
The chat is agreeing. We got a Moto Max says fake news. And so they're agreeing with you, AR, and your take on this. Rage Against the Machine says chickbait. I like that. So anyway, this is interesting. What I would say is if you when I hear a rumor like this, what would have given it a little more credence is if I had heard the publisher or if I'd heard who she's working with. It's very vague. And it makes me think that if it is true, it's likely would it be Howard Bloom's publishing company? I don't know. And I still don't even know what to think of When the Night Comes Falling, because something in that book for me had been discredited in public, which was the source information that the FBI was following Bryan Kohberger and his father all the way from Pullman to Pennsylvania. And the FBI came out and literally walked back that statement. And since when does the FBI ever come out and say they weren't somewhere?
Right.
Not common.
Well, and let's bring a little common sense to the thought process here. The Kohberger family has been absolutely respectful of this entire process. They've stayed behind the scenes. They've supported from afar to not only protect their son, but they're protecting themselves. So I also want to take a moment to separate two thoughts that many would have in regards, did the Kohberger family possibly help law enforcement in their investigation, both with the Amazon history, but also with their interest or their worry in regards to Bryan Kohberger possibly being involved in the crime. And you have to separate that away from this very news, and now possibly one of the sisters / daughter of the family could potentially be writing a book. That would not come out right now. There would be no possible way that would ever be released as information by the family prior to this going to trial, when they've clearly made the statement from the very get-go. They're going to stand and they're going to support and they're going to be by their brother and their son. And I also believe that even if he is found guilty, at trial, they're still going to be loving. They're still going to be supportive. So I think it needs to be very carefully looked at, and we're going to see one side of everything here really playing this situation up, where the other side's going to be dismissing it. And I myself, I'm going to stand very solidly that I'm dismissing the idea that this book is potentially being written. Is it just me on panel now?
No, but I had to go get a drink. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I'm just wondering, Bootsy, are you working on? Are you okay over there? She may not be able to hear us now.
I've got more where that came from if the chat is ready for it.
I'm more than ready to flow with you. Like I said, I came into this live prepared to be supporting cause to the two of you. So, and there she is.
Am I back?
I believe so.
Yay,
So.
Is it echoing? It is.
I don't have an echo, Swamp. All right.
It's the AR and Kiki show again.
It is. So why don't you come on up with point number 2? I think, are we on the same page though, Swamp, before we move forward? Are we on a pretty good thought process that even if she is writing a book, maybe it's true. I just don't think that information would come out right now. I just really don't.
You know, I don't believe in coincidences anymore. And the timing is so poor because nobody can make a public statement about it and the way it's presented to us. So, you know, I don't know what to say, but I do say that covering this and trying to be objective, that would be a piece of information I would not cover as fact on my channel. I might say this is a speculation, but I would never put more credence in it than that because, you know, the person they're talking about can't answer to it. And on top of it, that's a pretty, that could cause some prejudice to people that they're picking for a jury. So it's about being responsible. I mean, we don't have an obligation to not taint the jury pool, but, you know, as a citizen, we could do our best, you know, so that's my take on it as a citizen journalist. I just will take it as speculation for right now and not a reliable source. So
real quick before you move on, Swamp, everybody when Boots comes backstage, I will immediately bring her up. I know she's just working on something on her side. So the minute I can get her back up, please understand I definitely will. But Swamp and I are going to continue the show because that's what you guys are here for. So Swamp, what is your next topic?
Yay! Oh my gosh, I can't believe I get to lead the show again today. Okay, so my next topic I want to talk about. Today I was doing a lot of focusing on the 911 call. I've really been studying what I know, what was said about the Snapchat. So it brought me back to the 911 call. And as I was studying this, 2 questions came up, and I think that they're great discussion points. So I'm just going to start with each of them. The first one, I want to talk about the background noises in both of the recordings, from 4:17 that night and then from 11:58. So the first one, if we start from the beginning, that 4:17, okay, this is just an interesting point that somebody brought up, and I'd like to know your take on it. There's so much mystery. Oh, actually, I should bring up who brought this up to me. Michael Addario. You all might know Michael Addario. He had the Blow Up Moscow 11-13-22 series, incredibly powerful. I've featured him. I've interviewed him on my channel. He's the one who brought us the speculations regarding the cell phone interceptors and Stingray devices and the theories regarding the Fetty Bros. Anyway, I was talking to him today, and he was talking to me about Murphy and about a lot of perplexing things, but his number one concern was, okay, Murphy had no biological evidence on him. How strange is that? And I was telling him about how I had this recent picture I took off a TikTok where, you know, you've got 6 people in front of the dumpster with Murphy cuddling him right as the police are entering the crime scene. So we know Murphy technically didn't have any evidence on him. And that just stems a whole bunch of questions about where was Murphy? Was he contained? Were the doors open? Did he get out? Are some of these rumors true that Murphy was returned to the house later? But what I'm getting at is one thing about Murphy that really, really stands out to me is his barking. So we know that Kaylee, per the PCA, there were noises. We know that DM at a little after 4 heard what she thought were dog noises upstairs. Now, the reason we didn't think it was she didn't think it was something else is because it probably indicated dog. It was probably a dog barking. So at 4:17, the dog was captured barking again at a ring cam that was like 50 feet away. Now, this is the point that was brought up to me today. Did you know that JD lived this about 50 yards, or was about 50 yards away, and so was this camera? I mean, equal distance. So I'm wondering how much noise was out there. And I'm just wondering, did Murphy run to that house? Did he come back in the morning? I mean, just curiosity surrounding Murphy, I guess, is my biggest talking point. And then I'll bring up another point about recordings in a second. Sorry if that was long-winded.
No, I mean, I like sitting back. I like listening to the things you have to say. I mean, I did have a conversation a while back with somebody in regards to Murphy. And, one of my first questions when this all started to kind of materialize was Kaylee brought Murphy back from her parents' home when she returned back, and then proceeded. Everybody was out and about on the town, which leads me to ask the question, where did you leave your dog while you were all out and about? Because I'm a pet owner myself. And no, I don't take my dogs everywhere I go, but I also, if I had the opportunity to leave my dog, let's say, at my parents' home, all right, let's hope it works, Boots. If I had the opportunity to leave Murphy at my parents' home and then just make the trip down for the and one, spend the night with my friends, and then go back to my dog the next day, that's one thing. But why Jack D could have had the dog? Um, I just kind of wondered, did Jack D have the dog the whole night and bring it back the next morning when he came to the crime scene? There's so much that could go into that. That would be both, you could be conspiracy theorist side of it and you could be realistic side of it. But common sense to me is, why did Kaylee bring the dog back from her parents' house in the first place, thinking that she was coming back for an and one to show the car off and then potentially head back home the very next day? Why not just have your family watch the dog? But that's just my opinion. Bootsy, are we okay on your side now?
I just, you know what? I don't know if hopefully my chat can see me. I can't see my own chat. So unfortunately, so I'm hoping that, everyone can, like everyone on mine can.
Well, let me check. Why don't you two
Oh,
talk for a minute? I think I'm on your channel. Let me look real fast. But you guys chat for a minute, and I'll be right back.
okay. Thanks.
All right. So I didn't mean to talk like that. Sorry, guys. I forgot I was on camera for a second. Okay, so AR's gone, Boot's gone. I'll just take the floor.
I'm not gone. I'm here.
All right, so you bring up these incredible points and just some perspective as a dog owner. You know your dog's going to be kenneled up or in a confined space for a long time, and you have the option of leaving it outside with family. You would probably take for option B. But she did bring the dog with her. So the kennel is a big question. As far as I know, and the chat can correct me as I'm wrong, the most up-to-date, the most recent quote we had was that the kennel was inside the Range Rover, right? And
That's
so
what I understand. Yeah. So the kennel never made it in the house.
Right. Because we saw the picture of DM and Kaylee right before they went to the tailgating party, and there was no kennel in the room. Of course, it could have been the angle, but it's a pretty small room, and we saw most of it. Like, it didn't look like there was a kennel in there. So the point is that Murphy could have been somewhere else. Now, I don't know. I want to just back up a second and talk about the private driver, just the whole EG thing that we just saw released. So when Olivia first came out and said that she, and I could have got this wrong. Again, I'm speaking from very old information of interviews that aren't quite available as they used to be, said that she got footage that showed the girls walking the dog. Okay. And then we heard, and then we see these newly released documents. And I was listening to Chaos Sector earlier, and they brought up a good point, which is when DM started texting Eric Gower, could it have been that timeline is off? And I'm not suggesting anything wrong. I'm just saying, we know certain things in that PCA were incorrect and they were obviously wrong. So just maybe DM being asleep or awoken at 4 a.m. So could it be that maybe the girls didn't get, and she kept, remember Olivia was so upset the timeline was off. Could it be that they said, present it like this for the media because they were trying to catch somebody? And just remember, there were things that were off when Olivia was talking about this private driver other than the timeline. One of them was she said the word her, had the chance to correct herself, and then doubled down that it was a female. And then come to find out in the PCA, we have this, male. So my point is maybe she was purposefully displaying. I don't know. I just want to know what everyone else makes of this. And it was a good point. If DM was texting Eric Gower at that moment, Could it have been that that's when they were she was actually thinking they were dropped off? Was there a noise outside or dog activity? I don't know, but just all these curious questions coming to me.
I agree. And Bootsy, you're back.
Thank
Let me
goodness.
get. I know. I want to get your opinion on what Swamp is bringing up here, and it's in regards to kind of the timeline with the driver, Eric Gower.
Yeah.
We're learning more of that timeline through the documents, which I know you're big into documents. We're learning that at about 2:10 to 2:15 ish, DM is literally texting that driver.
Yeah.
To ask if he's driving, which I think Swamp makes a very good point, and I want to get your opinion. If DM knew that Kaylee and Maddie just got dropped off, let's say at 1:56 a.m., why would she be contacting that driver if she wasn't looking for a ride herself? What would be another reasoning, in your opinion, to make
that's what I've come to. I mean, the PCA, we can, in my opinion, I went over it and I highlighted it. You should see it's like red strikes all over the place. What's changed in it now? I don't know. I mean, I could give my opinion, but we don't have all the texts. So we don't know. We know that he responded, yes, I'm still driving. And then that's it. There's something in between there that we won't have until trial. But I'm throwing thoughts around.
Well, with
I don't know. He's the only one who said that I dropped them, but I didn't see them go in.
Right.
And fact is, they found the black jacket, down on the fire hydrant in that walkway that goes up to their house, that leads up to their house from Taylor.
Which is concerning, isn't it? Isn't that concerning too? Because that to me almost states someone didn't get to the house, or they got to the house and they left the house. But why would they leave the house and drop a jacket? There's something just very odd about that. But I do want to hit on the point that you just made in regards to what you said. You stopped. You said I could give my opinion, but no, I want your opinion. I want to hear from you, from your background. What does that tell you? What should we think we may hear at trial? Where do you think that may?
What do we think we'll hear at trial? And probably not the whole truth like we expect to, in my opinion. I really think that a lot is being held back by the two girls, and I'm not, full disclosure, I'm not trying to defame or make any, be insensitive. However, it's clear that they know more than what we're seeing about the whole situation. There isn't, them being on their phones and not seeing a whole lot else until the morning. I think 7:30 was when or 8 when the calls started again. The phone activity started again. I don't know. Murphy barking. Can I say one thing?
Of course.
Eric Gower was also, from Steve Gonzalez's mouth, a friend of the family, a very close friend of the family. He knew them very well. Dylan contacting him is a little odd to me. Especially 10 minutes after they got home, or he doesn't even state that he saw them get home. He says he dropped them off, doesn't say where. And he also said, I didn't see them walk in, but I did get them, quote, home, but he said he didn't see them walk in. So 10 minutes later, either two things, either she was messaging him to see, hey, where are they? They're not here yet, or to get a ride. What other reason would you message somebody like that?
That's a great point. And Kiki, I want to direct that to you. If you common sense wise were to think about this and exactly what Boots just said, there's two options on the table. We either have Dylan wondering where Kaylee and Maddie were at 2:17, when we've all been led to believe that at 1:56, those two young ladies were dropped off at the home and potentially walked into the home. Because
And then walk
remember,
Murphy.
right, and remember, because it's a key statement, Kiki, Dylan Mortensen said everybody was home in that house by 2 a.m. So that leads to believe that 1:56 a.m. those girls walked into the home after receiving their ride. But we're trying to put a perspective on Dylan Mortensen's 2:10 a.m. text message to the very driver that would have been the one that dropped them off. Two options. She texted to find out if he was driving, or she texted to find out where Kaylee and Maddie were. And I'll give my opinion after I hear both of you kind of just finalize your opinions on that, because I've got kind of a big opinion on that from a criminal side of things. So, Swamp, I'll throw it to you. I'd love to know your thought on that.
Uh-oh.
Swamp, you're on mute.
Sorry about that.
You're good.
And I tried to tell you you're on mute, and I was on mute.
Can't be worse than what I just did. So we're on track now.
Gosh, there's just so many things I want to talk about. I have no good answer to that, other than I echo all of your sentiments. Unless there's like a third party thing, we're not getting it. Like she was helping somebody see if somebody was available, and she had this specific person's number. I don't know. I can't think of any other reason, but I think that that's one of the questions, no doubt, Ann Taylor is going to clear up on the stand if it's not cleared up with unredacted text messages. But what I want to bring up is what's really interesting is when you see the activity, we have Kaylee calling Bethany, and we have Maddie calling Bethany right around the time when you think of all that phone activity to JD, like right around 2:56, and then Kaylee's phone going offline. And there's still activity in the house. Now I'm going back to Murphy. Like, is there something more? Like, were they calling him? Was it something to do with Murphy? Like, we don't know why they were calling so much, but I could see where she would have insistence on him picking up if it was about something to do with like their dog. Like if he was at their house. I don't know how this plays into it, but I have this like gut feeling that there's something more to the proximity of his house, Murphy, and Murphy not being part of this crime scene. And I just reading this comment by Moto Max, is it possible that Kaylee just wanted to visit JD one last time before moving away? And I mean, I think so too. But what's interesting is we have Kaylee and Maddie both texting him, then both stopping at 2:56 per the Gonzalez's letter to Andrew Myers. But Maddie still has her phone. So they stopped calling him. They either got an answer to what they were looking for or what, because Maddie was using her phone afterwards to call Bethany. So now
her phone was being used.
Or her phone was being used to call Bethany, correct. Yes, her phone had activity after that. So
right.
Maddie's phone wasn't offline. So if they got an answer to what they were looking for, or you better believe Kaylee, per her personality, would have picked up Maddie's phone and kept calling. I want to go back to the jacket though.
Yes, thank you, Keith. Thank you.
Okay, so here's my feelings on the jacket, and I felt this way from the beginning, and it ties back to McDonough. I never felt comfortable with the amount of the area of the crime scene. So like where the crime scene was the jacket wasn't included as part of the crime scene. Apparently neither was the glove that McDonough found. And then they widened the crime scene past the parking area of the high side of the house. So it does bring up like all these questions, and you can see why people have their doubts and they get frustrated, because when you see that photo of the officer picking the jacket up that is clearly at a crime scene, it probably should have been taped off and treated as such. I don't know, maybe he didn't feel that way because there were so many children in front of the dumpster. I don't know, but it's odd to me, especially with that glove. And then they decide to expand the crime scene after that. They already were looking at blood, boot prints, diagrams on the high side of the house, not to mention putting amino black up on Linda Lane at those apartments.
In the underground, yeah, in the little underground bottom level, yeah. But I saw them drop the jacket. We never saw them take it into evidence. I'm not saying it isn't, because it should be. Not everything goes like as it should be in this case, though. That's the worrisome part.
I want to just kind of add to both of you guys talking about this crime scene, because I think it's extremely important that we visualize how this house sits on the very corner that it does, because people almost project it as this crime scene is a very simple, here's the house and here's a little bit of a back parking area, and everything had to happen within that area, which is completely untrue. Because if you look at that entire corner, people can literally walk up a path in between houses. People can walk out different directions. Trust me, I've been to that crime scene. I've walked around that area. I know what the layout is. And there's 20 different ways you can walk to get away
Right.
from home.
Mm-hmm.
So me as an investigator, which obviously I'm not, but because I have a past of being around crime scenes on a different side of things, I know what is entailed. And we watched them walk the dogs in a very widespread area. They were walking up a fence line of a neighbor's backyard, heading towards Jack D's home, meaning that dog hit on something that was imperative to that house, and it led him up that path, whether that be Jack D at any point in time walking Murphy up that path or whatever it might be. Someone from that home had walked up that path to go that direction, and that dog hit on that. I don't know how the perp entered the property. I know what I've been told. I don't know how the perp left the property. I know what we've been told. But I also know if we formulate this entire timeline from the time that Eric Gower, who now I think is confirmed to be the actual driver, I think we all now can say, there's your private driver that brought Kaylee and Maddie home from the grub truck. That's my opinion, but I think it's being pretty substantiated through the documents and through the discussions. So my timeline of this event actually would start from the minute he picked Kaylee and Maddie up from the grub truck. There's the beginning of your time frame of this crime, because we don't even know what transpired from the minute that car door opened at the grub truck to the point these two young ladies are then supposedly dropped off at the home. But I have a question about that, because now we're discussing Maddie's jacket not being found in the home,
but down on the way to Taylor.
Right. We've seen her wearing that jacket on video at the grub truck. She's wearing that jacket. I don't care what people say. She's wearing that
absolutely same jacket. There's no question.
That jacket is now found in a totally different place than what's being considered to be a crime scene. So that tells me Eric Gower, when he says, I dropped the two young ladies off at the house, but I did not watch them walk in. Dude, I've got questions for you, man.
Do you think he dropped them off on Taylor?
I don't believe he dropped them off at the house. I mean, that's just
no, I don't either. He said he's
You do not find Maddie's jacket away from the home. She wouldn't have taken that jacket off till she got into the home.
Whoever's jacket that was, it wasn't hers, and it was my opinion, it was lent to her throughout the night or by somebody that maybe came and got it when they got home.
That Miss Potts brought up a very key point to that. They did not collect that jacket as evidence. They picked it up.
They didn't? Did we know that?
And they threw it to the side as if it didn't matter of anything. And I'm sorry, this is a quadruple homicide. You collect anything and everything around that home, and you put it into the evidence locker, and then you start to rule things out over time. You don't ever disregard something immediately.
Right.
But
why hasn't it been brought up at all?
Well, it's been discussed by some through the
but
time.
Not in court.
Right. It's never been brought up to an important standpoint of
I mean, that was the
conversation.
last thing that we visibly see her wearing, right?
So let me, I just want to throw 2 cents in. I want to pass it back to both of you because Swamp, you've got some amazing points. Boots, you're bringing up some amazing points as well. And I'm so interested in what both of you have to say. But I want to throw 2 cents at you just to give you a little bit of a thought process as you work your way through your discussion. I believe Eric Gower did not drop the girls off at the home directly. I believe Kaylee and Maddie were dropped off. Maddie, for some reason, takes off the jacket or somebody else removes the jacket. I don't know what happened in that. It could have been a struggle and it got pulled off. But I actually believe, and it's a great question here, what if Kaylee did walk over to Jack D's home within 50 feet away to either continue the argument she was having the entire time at the grub truck on her cell phone, texting nonstop 100 miles an hour? She was arguing with somebody because her full attention was on her phone. And in my opinion, because I've been through this before, that's an ex-boyfriend that's upset his ex-girlfriend is leaving the next morning, potentially taking their dog with her. And there's a little conversation that has to be finalized at that point. Even if it is, okay, well, Kaylee had to walk the dog. Okay,
Maybe-
Kaylee had to walk the dog to Jack D's house. Okay.
Unless Maddie went for her because she was upset. You know how
Right.
girls are? Because
Yeah.
Maddie was wearing the jacket, correct?
Well, I hope
Mhm.
so.
So Maddie may have been the one. Oh, I'll walk, they had broken up or not broken up, whatever the situation was. We know that Kaylee and Jack were, but whose DNA was found under Maddie's nails? Allegedly.
Yeah.
Jack D, Maddie, Kaylee. I can pull it up right now. And then that random person that just came up, which I've looked into, but I'm not going to say his name because I don't know.
Swamp, chime in. She's
Well,
looking
Yeah,
for
please.
The only thing I was thinking of is I was recalling a conversation I heard between Miss Potts and Dago earlier, and it was talking about the DNA underneath Maddie's fingertips, and they were talking about a lot and I could have heard this wrong, so please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm learning as well. It's so much information to absorb.
There is.
When the defense brought up the DNA under Maddie's fingernails, they brought up Ethan, but what they were saying is the probability
Right.
is great that this is Ethan as this is Bryan Kohberger. And if I got that wrong, I'm apologize, but that was my understanding. I don't know who
I do believe his name was in there, but Miss Potts would be the expert on that. For sure. But wasn't Jack D's as well?
I've been off for a minute, so I haven't dove into that.
Let me
I
pull
know-
it up. I think I can pull it up while you guys. Yeah, where's Miss
Well-
Potts is the
Wakanyan Tonka says it's a probability. So
Right.
Yeah, but if you
likelihood
can,
ratio, correct?
if you could pull up that exact wording, that'd be great, because then we can make a full circle and make sure that we're not just we're giving full information to everybody, and that's fascinating. And I'm just listening to you talk. I'm remembering all these talking points we've gone over this past time, and just back to the dogs. Like, I want to just bring up what we know about that. So, and this is just random information. I don't know if the audience is interested, but we were looking into I got this information from Heather Four on Twitter, and she also has a YouTube page, YouTube channel here. And she had photographs of the two different types of dogs used by the Moscow Police Department. So they have one which is like a drug sniffing dog, it's a lab, but the German Shepherd that we saw on the high side of the house was the
Cool.
cadaver dog, if I said that right. So it is looking for biological evidence, and we do not know how the killer exited the home, but I think it's been alluded to enough. And I'll tell you why I believe the killer left from the high side of the house, or the killers, whoever did this, is because first off, they're alluding to in the PCA, there's a reason why they allude more than once to the killer leaving out the sliding glass door. And it's not just because of the accounts of their witness that they constantly contradict. Not constantly, several times have contradicted that we know of. I believe what I've seen is the police collecting evidence all the way up the side of the high side of the house. So when I see the high side of the house, there's a hill, obviously the direction the unaliver went. But on one side of it, it's low and very close to the road. The other side is high. So the high side of the house, the side of the house where the sliding glass door is. We see the diagram there. We see the alleged boot print. And I know these are evidence because there were evidence markers by them. But what cues me in is when you see when they moved the crime scene to that parking lot beyond the high side of the house, you see them, what looks like them looking at blood evidence. And then if you believe that Papa Rogers was LE interjecting themselves into this case, which many, many of us do believe, and I lean towards now, he talked about blood on the high side of the house. And then if you just follow that straight line, that's right up to where they had the Mino Black tests going on over at the court on Linda Lane. I don't know if I'm talking too much.
No, you're doing great. Great point.
Sorry, my automatic vacuum went on. I had to turn them off.
I wish I had an automatic vacuum. Damn.
I know. Thank my daughter for that. Yeah, she got me into it. His name's Harold because he picks up all the hair.
Swamp, you have an automatic vacuum cleaner. It's called a husband.
Oh, I was going to thought you were going to say my dogs. No, my husband doesn't.
That too. I mean, you got dogs too. My wife, anytime it's like she has an automatic vacuum cleaner, she has an automatic dishwasher, she has an automatic lawnmower, she has an automatic everything in life except a moneymaker. But that's okay. That's okay.
You're a good man. You are too, baby.
I'm enjoying this with you two ladies. You have such good points, and it's just fun to watch you guys bounce these off of each other. And for one of the first times during live, I get to kind of just sit back and listen to both of you just really prove very valid things, and I appreciate that. So, if I seem a little quiet on this side, it's because I'm really enjoying the conversation. But and that's the thing. Swamp's kind of describing that.
I said vacuum.
I've been there on the back side of that home, and I do understand. The low side of it's when you walk right by Dylan's, bedroom window, and you go right down the pathway underneath the upstairs patio. You walk straight down, and you come out over near the apartments that everybody's talking about with the cars and everything of that nature. That's a very low point to be able to exit, which to me would have been the common sense way to get away from this crime scene. But the way everybody's making it seem as though is whoever this perpetrator was wanted to climb up a steep hill with slick leaves and things happening. But you're right, to the right of that, where we watched the cadaver dogs, and when I say to the right, it would be standing at the back slider door like we saw Kaylee and Hunter Johnson when they came out on the call with the cops talking about when you're facing out that direction, if you walk straight from that, it's where you would walk into the neighbors' homes, but there's a fence line there that literally has a pathway that goes straight up that fence line that would go legitimately right to Jack D's house.
Right.
It's literally right there. And that's where I know they were focusing a lot of effort, which tells me at some point in time, somebody walked that path, whether it be to walk their dog, whatever that might be, they walked right there.
When you were there, did you get a chance to walk that path and time it by any chance? Just wondering.
I didn't time anything because I was doing things I shouldn't have been doing and trying to avoid the security. Like I was literally getting up I was getting up onto the upper patio. I was doing things you weren't supposed to be doing. So Oh, the criminal ways of the
Yeah,
past.
yeah. So I have two comments in chat, and I don't know why, but I can't star them right now, but I do want to like maybe just bring them up.
Mhm.
Because uh sorry, somebody said, first of all, they weren't redacted. They were in there. Um Wakinian Tanka said that that CB, I'll say CB for now, that was indicated in the unredacted document. He does have connections to Quinn Kelly and Ashland Couch, because as I public information, I did look it up a little bit. He used to be a delivery person. He used to work in um around sharp objects. I will say. So my question is, was he the first suspect? Do we know who the first suspect was? And why were they dropped? I mean, those are all things that are so important to this case, and I haven't heard anything or read anything that has brought any of that up.
Swamp, do you want to throw your 2 cents in before I do?
Yes, please. So I think that's an amazing point, because if we can do anything is to prepare our audience for what they're going to have to absorb and analyze when this case begins in less than 4 months from now. And one of the things that we all need to be prepared for is that the defense of Bryan Kohberger, because don't forget, Ann Taylor, his lead attorneys, and Massoff stood up in front of everybody in the entire world and said, Your Honor, our client is innocent.
I have chills just thinking about that moment. I've never seen that happen in a courtroom. Not with that passion, not with that assure. Like, no, she meant it.
Absolutely. I can't recall ever seeing it either, Boots. I totally agree.
Never. I mean, yeah, my client's innocent until proven guilty, and it's just the court way. I've never seen an attorney get up there and actually say that with everything she felt and meant,
If you had come to
to a
my
judge.
hearings, you would have seen lawyers stand up and say, Your Honor, we're trying to get him to sign a plea bargain. He's so damn
Exactly.
guilty. We don't know what we're doing right now. They don't get up and say he's innocent when you join me in court. Trust me.
Yeah, I mean, she's not just doing her job. She absolutely, with everything, believes that he is innocent, and there are reasons. I just wish that. No, I don't wish. I think she's playing it smart. I hope and pray that that is what she's doing. She's given us a few nuggets, which I really appreciate. Which is nice. And I think that, I don't know, reading the documents, knowing the court system, and you as well, AR, I just hope that justice, like actual justice, can be served in this situation. I mean, is it only sometimes sometimes I think we may never know what happened. The other half of me says, okay, or no, the other part of me says, on appeal, yes, but it should never get to there, but it may. I don't know. AR, what's your opinion based on your experience?
If, and I hate to say this the way I'm going to say it because people are going to get frustrated, but this
It's
comes
okay.
from an experienced background of a defendant. Bryan Kohberger right now, as he sits, is kind of screwed. He's kind of in a very, very bad position in the sense that he's not being found guilty right now through the process of the courts, because even his own lawyers, like Swamp, you made a very good point. I want to jump back in to allow you to finish that. And Taylor stood before all of us and literally screamed innocence, screamed it in the way that she presented that in the courtroom while putting her hand on Bryan Kohberger's shoulder, clearly stating innocence. And look, none of my lawyers, none in the entirety of my history, even when I was innocent of a crime, would have said that in a courtroom, because they have to protect the process and work through the courts. But if you legitimately ask me, and I have to be fully transparent and honest where we sit today, Bryan Kohberger's focused on an appeal right here, right now. That's where we're at. He's focusing on the appeal process because of where this IGG and everything is leading, and the way this judge is allowing things to work its way through. It's not favorable to Bryan Kohberger. It's just not.
Well, if the IGG isn't an issue, that may be a different story. Would that change things, you think?
The IGG means nothing because they're going to
Right.
utilize the DNA, and the IGG is how they got the DNA.
But if the
Because
IGG, they agree that they're not going to use that or the process,
they're still going to bring up the sheath matching his buccal swab.
they
You have
can't,
to
because that was
understand.
only IGG. His blood
Oh,
wasn't, his blood was excluded him from the sheath, correct?
it's not blood, it's DNA.
It
His
that
buccal
it's touch
swab.
DNA, which is IgG, correct? I may,
Watch how
but
this gets presented, and this is why I'm proving a point of why our system is backwards. You would think because they're throwing the IgG out, they've agreed to not use the IgG. You would think that means the sheath is out, because that was what was utilized to get the DNA to match the sheath. You would think that way. But they're going to say the tip led them to Bryan Kohberger that got them the buccal swab, which matches the DNA on the sheath, so that the IgG doesn't matter. I'm sorry, this is just the way
it would, if he was excluded, that is the only thing. Like the blood he was excluded from. That they both agreed on that. They both said that.
Okay. So
And if the IgG is thrown out, I think that's why all these other things are now resurfacing, in my opinion.
I'm just telling you, they're going to do the buccal swab to the touch DNA under the snap, and it's going to be the downfall. But
yeah,
you're saying Swamp. I'm sorry. I want to jump back.
Sorry.
No,
Sorry,
Swamp had such a good point. I don't want you
Yeah.
to forget about your point. I wanted to jump back to you and let you go with that.
Well, no, I appreciate that. So just to build off of everything that you're saying. So we know that Ann Taylor turned to her client and said, "Your Honor, my client is innocent. Massoff said it too." So if we know that, if that's been put on the record, what do we know about that? We know that no matter what, it's an alternative suspect theory by nature of what she's saying. If her client is innocent, it's an alternative person. So alternative suspect theory is 100% something we have to discuss because it's going to come up in court. I mean, that's what Ann Taylor told us when she put her hands on Bryan Kohberger with her body language and her words and said, "Your Honor, my client's innocent." So when we talk about, when we brought this up, we were talking about alternative suspects, and that's how I came full circle to this statement that I'm saying now. I know it kind of sounds like out of place, but
no, no, you're good. No, it doesn't sound out of place because you're circling back to this issue. I'm trying to look at it without aside from the IgG, because they don't have DNA, they don't have blood DNA. And if anybody wants to sit here and tell me that touch DNA is more important than blood DNA, I don't even think that's it. And he was excluded from the blood on the sheet. So if we can throw the DNA out, the other issues, and I believe that's why the other issues are coming back up, the alternative suspect theory would definitely, I mean, I hate to do it because I've been up nights crying about this. No, I'm not joking. But what AR said is most likely correct. I just think that it doesn't mean we'll stop fighting, but he's
I'm going to throw a legitimate question, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but it's an important legitimate because it goes right to both of you, what you guys are discussing, and it's very important. Not only is the fact that people believe Bryan Kohberger are innocent that have actually seen the evidence that the state has against him, and they still stand up and say innocent, which I think is very important. Swamp is a key point. And Taylor and Nassau both have stood before the court when they've seen 68 terabytes or whatever it is worth of evidence, and they still shake their head and say, you haven't got to our client. You haven't proved it yet. You haven't even been able to turn over very important information that if it was our client, you would have. So I agree, Swamp. I absolutely agree with you. And then I also agree with Boots. I agree with you in regards to the IGG led to everything. It led to everything.
I mean, reality is reality, and what they're doing behind the scenes, and they can cover it up all they want. They can paint it a different color, but that is absolutely, and I think we all know that's exactly how they got to it. But they have to have another explanation in court if they're both gonna agree that the IGG is out.
But I'm also going to make a very valid point because that's a key point too. I'm going to make a very key point too. April 9th and 10th is huge. These motions of limine are huge. And I'm going to throw something into both of your baskets real quick that's going to spin your minds. And it's going to be hard for you guys to answer, but I'm excited to hear you guys answer. Remember, one of the motions of limine is by the prosecution stating no alternative suspect defense. They want that out. Now,
It's a motion that should be done.
Okay, this is an important motion because this is going to showcase you what type of judge you have over hearing this case. Because in any case, a defendant has the opportunity to prove somebody else could have potentially committed the crime. You have that right as a defendant to put on the defense that could showcase reasonable doubt of other people committing this crime. And I think in this case, you guys both have seen evidence that could potentially point towards somebody else. But I do want to ask you, what if the judge approves that motion and Bryan Kohberger, A, walks into this trial with no ability to defend an alternative suspect, but also 2, loses the option of any alibi defense unless he takes the stand. Those both are huge. And I'm telling you right now, from personal experience, I'm going to tell you, the prosecution's going to win both of those motions.
I don't know.
I'm going to win those motions.
I'm sorry, Swamp.
No,
Go ahead.
No,
what's
your thought?
I do have an opinion on this. I believe that the reason the judge has Cyree on standby Zoom is because, just like the Franks hearing, he has the ability, and I'm giving him too much credit, but he does have the ability to do the same work on Bryan's car that night, where he was at the other times. He can give him a solid alibi with generating the same thing he did in the other situation. Does that make, am I making sense?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why they have him on standby. I really believe in that case that the alibi situation, it's a civil right. I mean, he's got to have that. It's ridiculous. It's a motion. It's ridiculous to assume that that's going to be denied. I mean, it's yeah.
Go ahead, Swan.
Ask Twiz where Bryan was that night.
Oh, I know Twiz. Twiz is definitely shared with me. Trust me.
Okay, so since I have the floor for Twiz, he was in Lewiston. Lewiston. I can't even talk. I'm from the Northeast. We say things a certain way. I want to reiterate what you're saying. I agree with your sentiments. This is a civil rights issue, and it's unique to the state of Idaho. Although other states may have similar laws, this these alibi proceedings appear to be something in Idaho law. So a couple things about that. When it comes to Cy Ray and him being on standby, there's two things when it comes to Bryan Kohberger's defense, which I feel it really feels like a civil rights issue. The first one is the motion is to suppress the AT&T advanced timing records and have Cy Ray on standby. If that proves Bryan Kohberger was somewhere else during the crime, it just feels like taking exculpatory evidence and withholding it from the jury. If that's the case, I don't know how you look at that differently. Unless if the prosecution is saying that is flawed, then their argument should be to prove how it is flawed, not just say, throw it out. Nobody needs to, don't look here. And that's how it feels. I don't know if that's how it is. The second thing I would say is when it comes to Bryan Kohberger's alternative suspect theory, I don't know about naming specific people, but putting out an alternative suspect theory, again, seems like a civil rights issue. It seems like possible exculpatory evidence, particularly if the police suspected someone else. I don't know how you could leave that out. And it does sort of sound like if this was brought in front of a panel for appeal, that might be something that would really catch the ear of people in appeal or bring it to a Supreme Court. But Bryan Kohberger being forced to take this stand in order to give a defensive theory feels, I'm trying to think of the right word, but it almost feels like, and I know this is the wrong word, and you'll have to forgive me because I'm just a housewife. I don't have a legal background, but it feels like, sorry for using this word, extortion in a way. I don't know, like, do this or to save your life, or you can't do anything. I don't know. Someone tell me.
I mean, I do feel that he's been sensitive to certain things. And I think that the purpose of approving the motion, okay, let's appease the prosecution, but we would like to, I think Cy Ray has a lot to offer, and I believe that they may be able to use him in a limited capacity as far as the alibi goes. Live. We'll see what happens. I mean, that's totally up to the judge, but he's going to show us who he is that day. That is when we will know for sure, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I think I should go back in because I've been put as a defendant in these positions. I did have to take the stand before on my own behalf to discuss an alibi theory because we didn't meet the deadlines. We didn't meet the time frame of getting them, because what you have to understand, why the judge would make this decision to put it in Bryan Kohberger's hand to take the stand or not is based upon there was no corroborating people that could come forward as a witness to attest to exactly what he's saying. And that's difficult because that's where a judge's standing would be. That is their law in the state of Idaho. And it's also the law in Arizona as well. So it's no different in Arizona than it is in Idaho. And I had that issue before when I tried to utilize an alibi. We filed all the documents. We filed everything. We didn't have a way to corroborate it. We didn't have any witnesses. We didn't have any of the backing of that. And I fully understand that it's difficult for someone to take the stand to tell a story because you're opening up the door to the prosecution being able to cross-examine you. And I don't believe by any means that Bryan Kohberger is going to take the stand. I don't see it. You're opening the door far
That's
too
child
wide.
suicide, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's far too wide because now you're not even just discussing the alibi. You leave the door open to any question the prosecution wants to come with.
Mm-hmm.
So that's never going to happen. But to extend that out to the alternative suspect defense, it's not a statement that you can't discuss other possibilities. Like you can't bring into the question, could somebody else have committed this crime? That's not what I mean by taking out an alternative suspect. It's you can't bring up the evidence that could possibly help you prove that. Meaning the blood in the home on the handrail may not be able to be brought into the trial. The blood on the glove outside may not be able to be spoken of in the trial.
We don't know yet.
Many. Right. No, but what I'm saying is that's a possibility. And that's where I say Judge Hitler here in these very motions that we're about ready to hear in April can change the whole dynamic of this trial in a heartbeat decision. And that's what's scary about our justice system. This is why I've been screaming for years. We need a panel of judges. We need a group of individuals that can hold a conversation amongst each other like the three of us are right now. Not all three of us view things the exact same way. We don't agree on every single point that we discuss, but the good thing is we can all sit right here together. We can discuss things and formulate an overall thought process that ends in a good calculated result. And we would never put somebody's life or anything at risk without having that very important conversation. So how do we allow a single individual, a judge, that's already shown tainted thinking in regards to he doesn't fully understand the DNA concept because he point blank looked right at Bryan Kohberger and said, you have no privacy because you left your DNA at the crime scene. Well, prove that. You know what I mean? You just made that statement without proof. Bryan Kohberger left his DNA at the crime scene because it's not actual blood or semen or saliva. We're talking about a movable type of DNA. So now that's kind of a judgmental statement by a judge. And this is where I'm nervous.
If you look at it, it's kind of common sense. I not that I agree with it. Okay, don't get me wrong. But if he's being objective and looking at it from the outside in, then why is your DNA there? Okay, maybe somebody else took part in it, but who's saying you weren't there? The whole point is he has to prove where he was at that time in order for him to say, I wasn't there. Does that make sense? That's why these timing records are so important, in my opinion.
Well, yes, maybe that makes sense. And I say that's the law side coming from the law part of this panel that makes sense. Now, I want to hear Swamp. We heard the law side. Swamp, you come in with the common sense side, then I'm going to be the criminal and I'm going to tell you what's up. So come on in, Swamp.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I got distracted. I was trying to answer somebody in the chat. Could you just post the question to me? I am so sorry.
No, but
it's okay.
She made a very valid point. I want you to make your point again from the law side, Boots, so everybody can get it again from the law side. And then I want common sense from Swamp.
Well, what I was saying, I don't even remember how I said it. That the importance of the timing report, the timing records, because if the judge is supposed to be, I'm not saying he is, from a legal standpoint, he is supposed to be objective. If you're looking at an objective situation, and objectively means like not knowing everything else around it, right? Okay, maybe your DNA was there. Maybe other people were there too. Maybe I do believe that, but it doesn't mean you couldn't have been there. So you need to prove to me in some way. And I think that's sort of what this expert testimony is really going to be so important because of this. You need to prove to me before I approve or deny this motion that you absolutely were someplace else. You couldn't have been there, even though your DNA was there. That's what I was saying. PSYRE is very, 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 in my opinion, important to the pre-hearing trials, because I'll say it a million times. This is going to prove to us who Hitler really is. I think in pre-trials where it's mostly going to happen.
But Wow. I mean, it's a powerful, powerful statement. I have to say that first, Boots. And I think that if I had to put it in my own words, it feels like it's backwards, because the system is, you don't have to prove your innocence. The system has to prove your guilt. So when you are left to prove you weren't somewhere, that's not the way the judicial system is supposed to work. It's supposed to be that the prosecutors prove you were there. It's not the other way around. You know, I, the citizen sitting here in Cape Cod, don't have to prove that I wasn't at the 1122 King Road home on the 13th of November, 2022. The prosecution would have to prove I was there. You know, if I were the suspect. I'm just trying to give a hypothetical, and probably
No,
not.
and I agree with you. I wish that was the reality that we see. But in your opinion, Swamp, like, what is the reality that you're seeing though? So yes, I agree with you. That's how that is how it's our justice system, our judicial system is functioning at this point in time overall. But do you really, what is your opinion on how you think it's going to go in this case? Do you think it can go that way at this point?
I mean, okay, so there's a couple of other things, a couple of things I don't know. Like, I don't know what's going on with the rest of the forensic download of Bryan Kohberger's phone. And Cyray seems so pivotal still. It tends to make me think that maybe there isn't more evidence about his location than what we've seen from, you know, from the initial mapping that they did, put in the probable cause. The other thing that AR brought up is, you know, we are just hearing about this, you know, Amazon click history and the Takeda knife sheath and everything, right now. But Ann Taylor and Massoff, when they said my client is innocent, they had heard that too. So this isn't new information to them. So, you know, even through all of this, they're still standing by their client as innocent, alternative suspect theory. And I mean, I guess my answer is I don't know, because I'm trying to take the responsible position that I understand is the responsible position that I learned from Lawyer, you know, which is you never ever take a position until you've seen all that evidence.
Exactly.
One thing that would change everything for me maybe is if I could get some pieces put together by seeing the forensic download of Xana's phone. I really feel like that's the one thing that makes this these text messages we're looking at maybe a little clearer, but I don't know. I
can't believe you said that, because I've been thinking that the whole time too, and I haven't heard that brought up often.
I'm just giving a stream of thought. So I really hope, if I'm not, you know, trailing off, that I'm glad you thought of that too, because well, I know probably everyone listening and following this case, it's Xana's forensic download that we're all so interested in. And now that I've seen Maddie making that phone call at, like, you know, to Bethany after the phones had gone offline, I kind of now want to see Maddie's forensic download. And I think we all want to know, and I hate doing this because we're not sitting here to attack having roommates, but God, all of us we want to know, you know, what are they going to be presenting in court? What was that video? What were those selfies? What was the activity? What was Indeed? What were we doing on Indeed? We're just going to want to know. And because the way that it appears, it was an interesting comment AR made in the live stream last night. It feels like they were having it on paper, it looks like they're having a regular Sunday morning, you know, and so it's just weird. It's odd. We don't know what's going on. And I know it appears one way because we don't see the actual content. We just see, oh, you were on Insta. Oh, you were on Indeed. You know, we don't know. Oh, you were taking pictures and stuff. You know, we don't have the context. I wonder what it's going to be like when we do, because we're going to find out. We're going to find out.
There's a ways to go, you know. I think Ann Taylor is putting out as much as he safely can, to let us know, to let the public know what they need to know and go from there. But unfortunately, it's so twisted on the other, you know, on on one side of this, that it doesn't, in a way, I just think that they just want somebody, they just want justice. They don't care who it is, as long as it's justice, and that's that. But the correct justice is what really, really matters. I don't think that, we made my opinion. I was telling AR this before. I don't know if we'll ever know exactly what happened, but I do know that none of the facts that we see right now are pointing me in the direction of the person in the orange jumpsuit, the person that had the silly selfie, which, by the way, my kids take all the time and look just as goofy. I love it, but what it is, um, just the way everything's being twisted, it's going to be hard, in my opinion, to find an unbiased jury, and I pray that they can. I really do.
I agree. If I could jump in for 1 second, I just want to talk to the chat for 1 second,
Oh,
if you don't mind. This community is absolutely amazing, Boots. And for anybody and everybody that hasn't subscribed to Boots, please do. And of course, Swamp, my other partner of crime here that, I enjoy sharing the stage with. But I do ask the chat, let's respect everybody here. My chat is not just based, and I think Swamp is the very same, and Boots is the very same. We are not focused on who believes in guilt, innocent,
right.
or straight down the middle line of innocent until proven guilty. We want everybody to be able to discuss in a respectful way the important facts of this case, and also the theories and thoughts that we have within us without being attacked. So everybody within the chat, please show each other respect. And Texas Ranger, I see that some people are kind of directing comments towards you, and I want the chat to know I have absolute respect for Texas Ranger. We have had conversations outside of just this case, but actual real life. The man has worked hard within our system, within the penitentiary system. He has experiences that can be shared with so many, just like I do, just like Boots does, just like Swamp Rose does. It's a conversation, ladies and gentlemen. We're not here because we know all of the answers. I don't know all of the answers. I don't think anybody will claim that they do. But I ask people to be respectful in the manner that they want to be respected as well. And I have respect for Texas Ranger. So for those that are within my chat or the others, please be respectful, because I respect Texas Ranger, and Texas Ranger is a member of my channel and respects me. So please offer that. I'm asking you to do that, because I don't want to remove people from my channel for disrespect, because that's what my channel's based on. And I'm going to
Yeah, mine is too. I'm sorry if that's happening in my chat. I really
No,
can't. I
it's
can only
not.
see part of the chat. Okay.
It's not. But to kind of add real quick before I want to move on to some more points that both of you ladies have, I'll just kind of surmise real quick what I've heard from the both of you and then give you my quick opinion of both. I've heard both of you speak that it's very important that we get to hear side Ray at trial. We get to hear the different reasonings of why obviously the alibi defense should be able to be Bryan Kohberger's right and should be capable, as well as the various other opportunities to defend Bryan Kohberger, like a possible other suspect defense. And I agree with both of you. But I also know our system, and what concerned me was hearing a judge make a pre-judgmental statement in a suppression hearing that leads me to believe that you better be able to prove why that DNA is at the scene. This isn't about Bryan Kohberger, again, having the state have to prove his guilt. That's the way it's supposed to work, ladies and gentlemen.
That's the reality right now.
That's the way it's supposed to work, is the state is
Yeah.
supposed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt you were guilty of the charges they have charged you with.
Yeah.
The problem in today's system, Bryan Kohberger already has been arrested for this crime, and we've all watched the transition through the process, and the judge clearly states, well, I think you're involved because your DNA was at the crime scene. So anything beyond that, I don't really want to hear until trial. So that's just my point. That's all I'm trying to say is we all feel as though this judge could lean towards letting Bryan Kohberger prove his alibi, prove this, prove that he wasn't at the scene. The judge has already clearly stated he was at the scene because of his DNA being found there. So that's just my opinion. That's my opinion.
Well, and that leads to he may not allow the timing records that prove the other two, the two victims and the other suspect, which they stopped looking at. He doesn't want to hear about anybody else. He doesn't want to hear about the 38 people on the tower. He wants to know or hear where Bryan was.
Mhm.
And these are motions, so it's not like an innocent until proven guilty situation. We're not at trial yet. These are you have to prove it to the judge and add law behind it. And this is where he makes the decisions on what gets to go in. So it's a little different. I'm not saying it's right or fair or what should happen, but I think from a legal aspect, maybe that's how he's going to get he's going to do this. He wants to know where he was. And he wants to be able to prove it.
I think we lost Swamp Rose there for a minute.
Oh,
And I
no.
agree with you, but I also, because I've sat in that defendant's chair,
Yes.
know that right now, while we're saying that Bryan Kohberger is expected by this judge to prove it, that already spells out the problem.
Yeah,
Bryan
no, I agree. It's a
Kohberger-
huge issue with that's horrible.
In our system, and Swamp, you brought it up, we're innocent until proven guilty, which means if that's the case, Boots, and I'm going to utilize a little bit of Swamp Rose common sense when I say this, which I don't use often, but I'm going to try this. I'm going to put on that common sense hat for a moment, and I'm going to say, if it's truly innocent until proven guilty, I, as a defendant, Bryan Kohberger as a defendant, any defendant that's sitting, working his way into trial should be able to be completely mute and do nothing but allow the prosecution to put on their case and allow my defense attorneys to ask questions that could potentially poke holes in that. But if we're watching real clearly right here in the Bryan Kohberger case, that's not happening. It's expected right now, not only by this judge, but by at least 50% of the people weighing their opinions in on this case, that Bryan Kohberger better step up to the plate and start proving innocence. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and I apologize.
No, I mean, I
think
agree with
tried
you.
to present that the best I could.
It's his courtroom, and that's what's so concerning. And that's what is not, it's not supposed to be that way, but in a way, it's his courtroom and he wants to know some things. And I think that's what's happening right now. He wants to know where he was.
Right.
And he doesn't want to know where everybody else was or who else was there with him. He wants to know where he was and if he can prove he wasn't there.
Swamp, answer me this real quick. I'm going to take what Boots just said. I'm going to throw you some real quick because I do want to know Swamp's opinion on this. So the judge wants to know where Bryan Kohberger was and all of that before he would, really take on the idea that Bryan Kohberger wasn't there or wasn't a part of it. What if Bryan Kohberger was parked just outside the house but wasn't actually the one that committed the crime? Does that mean that this judge should still potentially say you have to be absolutely? What if he was? We've heard rumor Bryan Kohberger could have been sitting in his car behind the home doing whatever he was doing in his car, and somebody else walked into the home and committed this crime. Should Bryan Kohberger have to really have to prove all that fact, or should the prosecution have to prove that Bryan Kohberger was the one that was in the home and committed the crime? That's just, isn't that innocent until proven guilty?
Well, I mean, here's the thing that where it rings true to me is like, I go back in like the beginning of November when we're looking at those thousands and thousands of pages of documents that the defense had to submit and then resubmit. They were the motions in response to the motions to suppress evidence, and all the wheels that were spun and all the tax dollars that were spent, the hundreds and hundreds and tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees, just so we could say denied to everything. To me, if you're going to spend that much effort to get every single motion in response to motion to suppress, right? Why would you make some blanket proclamation that all alternative suspect theories are out unless you hit the stand, and not combat it on an individual basis, just like all of those motions to suppress and answers to motions to suppress? Why is it just a blanket you know what I mean? Like all of those intricate motions about evidence and this little piece here and this, but no, anything to do with this one thing is out. It just seems so like, I'm using really big trigger words tonight. It seems so communistic. I'm sorry.
Unfair is what it is. Unjust.
Show you the crime,
It's not how our system is supposed to work. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but yeah,
no,
you're correct.
Thank you for validating. No, I appreciate you saying that. And then on top of that, to go back to what Boots was saying at the beginning of this interaction that the three of us were having about this segment we're having now, the judge bringing up the DNA evidence and saying, basically the DNA evidence that we're talking about right now, the investigative genetic genealogy, the DNA that was on the buccal swab that was the probable cause to get Bryan. When the judge slipped out and said, when Ann Taylor was saying, well, this and that for the reasons Bryan not being there, because that IgG was not supposed to be reason for probable cause. And the judge came out and said, well, wait a second, his DNA was there. That's the same every day and twice on Sunday. So the question I have is back to the judge. Isn't unidentified male blood DNA every day and twice on Sunday at a crime scene? I know, and that's all I have to say for it.
The only thing we can do is bring awareness to them. And it's hard.
Well, and to go with that, the prosecution, in their attempts to get the alternative suspect discussion to not be able to be brought into the trial, is stating the defense has to be able to prove why that evidence would have meaning or a part of this crime or this crime scene. And I get, like, okay, a knife sheath found at a crime where the crime is potentially stabbings would carry value. I get that. But I also understand that in a knife fight, somebody's going to get cut and bleed. Like, I know that from personal experience. It happens. So blood to me would be extremely important in a crime like this. If I found blood or bodily fluids at a crime scene, that would actually carry more value to me than a knife sheath that could have potentially been in the home prior to the crime happening. This is Idaho that we're talking about, and I see a lot of discussions by people that state many people have K-bar knives in Idaho. It's a hunting state. Pennsylvania, many people have K-bar knives. It's a hunting state. I agree. There's not always blood found at homes and on handrails of homes and these things. It should have damn well become important. And for a judge to overlook that, and that's why I'm saying these motions in limine, they are the next step of the most important part of this before trial. The suppression hearings were huge. I would have never thought that that would have gone straight across the board denials on everything. Like, that doesn't happen. That does not happen in the court of law. There's always some argument that a judge reasons with and says, yeah, you know what, I kind of see that. I agree with that. I don't agree with these 12, but this one makes sense to me. So, okay, I'm going to throw this out. This case, he threw everything out. So now this motion to eliminate, this literally is going to tell you exactly where this judge stands. And I hate to put it this way, but this is the honest way I feel. This is going to determine whether he's a Judge Goal from the Delphi case that's going to close everything down to the vision of people. This could become a dark trial, or he's going to stay open-minded. He's going to listen to these motions. He's going to value them and weigh them out appropriately. And then we're going to have a transparent trial moving forward. I sure hope we get the second part of that, because I really don't want to see a dark courtroom. And unfortunately, in our country, we're definitely getting less transparent than we should be as taxpayers and of people that are supposed to have a voice within our communities. This isn't showing it well. This is not showing that well.
I agree. Swamp, do you agree with that?
Absolutely. Well, absolutely. When it comes to my opinions on investigative genetic genealogy, I think that there's so many unanswered questions that I have that we shouldn't be requiring defendants within the United States to use their IgG evidence as part of their plea deals, because that evidence would have been vetted before it went to trial. So in that sense, this trial has changed my mind about that one specific piece of science when it comes to, when it comes to a crime. I want to bring up 2 points that came to me while you guys were talking. The first one is a point that Mikey pointed out to me right before the January 23rd and 24th hearings. Mikey, who's in my chat over, one of my mods over in my chat. These trials, and I'm sure both of you know this, I'm saying this more to the, the audience, but these trials, these pre-trial hearings that we're seeing now, this is where the case is decided. The actual trial is what they want us to see. So right now, what we're seeing right now, even though it seems like confusing and overwhelming, keeping up with all of this is so important because it gives us the bigger picture. We don't know what the judge will choose to exclude from the jury's ears until this April 9th hearing. And it's going to be really interesting. Another thing I wanted to bring up when we talk about the DNAs and the probable cause and everything, and it was just brought up in the chat. I had totally forgot about it, but I was tuning into Miss Potts. I don't know, it must have been like a week or two ago. And we remember Brett Payne on the stand saying, he was asked, did you upload more than one DNA? And he's like, well, I could only, as far as I know, upload one at a time. Well, Miss Potts, Annie, actually made a series of phone calls, and she ended up on the phone with CODIS in New Hampshire. And she spoke with an amazing woman named Megan, who completely in plain English spelled out the CODIS system for everybody and how it is designed to take more than one profile uploaded. And it's an interesting that how this investigative officer, this lead investigator to the largest murder trial in the world, where he got the idea or impression that he had to withhold genetic profiles from the investigation. I'm sorry, and that's all I have to say. I hope I delivered that right.
Yeah. Go ahead. I can't believe I missed that episode. I watch Miss Potts all the time. I'm like, I missed that.
Miss Potts has the entire, I'm sure it's labeled in a way that you could find it if you went to Miss Potts channels. I mean, I think it might even be, somebody could maybe drop a link. I should make Miss Potts mod right now. But, it's a great show, and it teaches you so much about the system, and it brings you back to, okay, and I hate it, but we have to put a microscope on what's going on right now. If we as armchair detectives can make a phone call or a Google search and find out a process that could make the opportunity for, you know, an extreme offender to be out, to stop an extreme offender from walking amongst us. Like, it's hard to believe that the lead investigator wouldn't know, because this is a public safety issue. It's not like just that Bryan Kohberger's life is hanging on line, although that's enough. Are we safe? Is there a psychopath walking amongst us capable of these unthinkable crimes? Is there, you know, if Bryan Kohberger is part of this and he is innocent until proven guilty, did he act alone, or are we excluding people so that we have a sacrificial lamb?
I think what's most frustrating is when I watched Payne say that on the stand, I wanted to just destroy my computer while I watched that in regards to the codes, because that is such BS. That is absolute BS. Samples are ran through CODIS thousands of times an hour throughout our country. And every lab in every state can work through the CODIS system. You can send thousands of samples to be tested in matter of hours. I mean, so to see a lead detective of a case get up and say, well, I didn't want to run. What, you think that Bryan Kohberger sample had to sit in the little platter and wait for the weeks upon weeks so that you didn't lose it before you ran another sample? That's ridiculous. But
It is ridiculous. I mean, anybody who believed that, it's crazy. And the fact that he didn't call him out by lying like that is insane.
Well, what's worse about it is Bill Thompson knows that's BS. He could advise people during an investigation that you could run more than one sample through CODIS. Anybody working at the Idaho State Police could literally give you the knowledge that you can run more than one through the system. And then you want to add the FBI on top of that. You're telling me the FBI doesn't know that it can run more than one DNA sample through CODIS? I mean, are you serious?
It's just so ridiculous.
We have this many idiots all lined up together working one case. We brought all the morons in and said, you're all working the Idaho case. Every one of you morons, you're all on the same case.
Pretty much.
Swamp, you're on mute.
Sorry. I have something to say about this. So, okay, you can't have your cake and eat it too. So, I mean, if Brett Payne is saying, I relied for my mapping and to track Bryan Kohberger on people smarter and more educated than you, which might I remind you, the FBI agent Nick Balance, who helped form the case against Bryan Kohberger, leaked his text messages to Ann Taylor. And she just presented them on the stand randomly to Payne. Okay, so Payne is saying he relied, Corporal Payne is saying he relied on somebody smarter and more educated than him. Why didn't you rely on somebody smarter and more educated than you when you uploaded effing DNA to CODIS? Sorry.
And that's the thing.
I need to. But seriously, like, that's like, it's just, as I'm listening to you guys, I'm like, wait a second. You know, and I understand the invasiveness when you're on the stand and you're playing for one team. The best thing you can do is evade questions, of course. But how frustrating is it for the truth? How frustrating is it for transparency in the legal system when somebody just uses political tactics on the stand, you know?
And that's the thing. They're not supposed to be batting for one side.
Right.
They're supposed to be batting for justice and to keep the town safe or keep everybody safe. They could care less, in my opinion. I'm sorry, but
and there's a comment up on the screen that we'll all weigh in on. I'm going to jump on it just real quick. And yes, you can run more than one sample, but it has to be indicative of the putative perpetrator. I get that. Like, I get that. Blood found in a crime scene that was committed, a quadruple homicide, with what's deemed to be a sharp, blunt knife object. Blood would be a putative to the perpetrator. I'm sorry. And anybody can argue, oh, well, it was found on the downstairs handrail of a house that a witness stated the front door was wide open of at 8:30 in the morning with no movement in or around the home. So, okay, how do we not know that blood's not important, considering that could have been an exit of the home? If you're bleeding, you just committed a quadruple homicide, your hand would touch that rail on your way down the stairs and out the front door to leave the crime scene. I think they should have tested that blood. They should have got the results of who that was. I get it. If they found blood 3 blocks away on the bumper of a car, okay, we're not going to run that blood. I get it. That's probably not the perpetrator. We're talking about a quadruple homicide crime scene with a knife. Could potentially be other weapons. We don't know. And I don't go down those roads because I don't know. There probably is a knife. I made a good analogy last night with my battle with the apples in my kitchen the other day. And let me tell you, my wife has deemed that that's never going to happen again on my part. The blind man does not try to cut. And what's funny, and Swamp kind of knows this, because of my past, I'm not allowed to have certain type of objects in my home. One of them being like cutlery, really sharp knives and stuff of that nature. But, you know, so I got these like child Play-Doh type things that are supposed to cut apples and whatnot. Come on, ladies and
Don't
gentlemen.
say too much. You'll end up in Moscow.
Yeah. Let's really think about this statement, though. So they could run more than one, but to be eligible, it must be indicative of the putative perpetrator. I can make this final statement, and I pass it to you two ladies. I've never seen a knife sheath stab somebody to death before in my life, but I've seen a lot of blood at a crime scene where a knife was the weapon used. But I've never seen a knife sheath cause that type of damage ever. And I've been around the block a long time at the criminal side of things.
All right. So, do you mind if I take the...
Go for it.
All right. So the first thing is I just have to kind of push back at you. Are you telling us that you have to use sporks? I'm just joking.
Oh,
sorry, I have a dry sense of humor, you guys. You'll get used to it if you listen to me long enough.
You know, that's all you get when you're
I love it.
is sporks, right? That's what I ate with for long times.
They now have sporks with like chopsticks at the other end. Do you know that?
Mm-hmm.
You should always keep a spork somewhere in your, like a little, spork inside plastic somewhere in your car. They're a very handy tool to have. So anyway, not just trying to be a little lighthearted, but just get back to the serious subject that we're talking about, which is which profiles are uploaded to CODIS. Again, so thank you to Mikey for sending me the guidelines to CODIS, which I went over. I've done them in a live stream on my secondary channel before. And I will say, looking at the qualifications for DNA that is not mixed, and even DNA that is mixed, but non-mixed DNA profiles, I want to bring up 3 samples that I think would have qualified for CODIS within the crime scene, just to answer Viviana's question. Number 1, the latent shoe print. So the latent shoe print, let's just say it doesn't matter how the shoe print got there. If the print wasn't there, okay, it to me, what this is, how it's reading to me is that there was some sort of covering over the shoe, probably to protect DNA from the unaliver from getting into the crime scene. In order to have a shoe print, if you're covering your shoe with like a bootie, there has to be, it has to be saturated with blood. What I'm getting at is a latent shoe print means that there were other footprints. It probably tells the direction the unaliver went. But that latent shoe print, if the barrier is so worn that you have the shoe print, and this was proven by Steve Webb and Drunk Turkey Show, that means that DNA no longer has a barrier. So whatever is on that shoe should now be transferred to the home. So the latent shoe print possibly could have touch transfer DNA or something from inside of the unaliver's car, their home, something like that. So I wonder if the latent shoe print, because they did use amino black on that, but my understanding is they could do it in a way that they'd still be able to collect DNA from it. I don't know. I'm just, like I said, a housewife. I don't know. But the second thing,
technically you're correct, I think, on that. They just didn't do it that way.
and I don't know if they did or not, but that's the way it's reading to me. And then the two other samples that I think would have qualified for CODIS from my basic understanding is the other one would be the DNA on the knife sheath. Because it's the same qualification. So like with touch transfer DNA, the gold standard, if you're going to use that, is fingerprint within fingerprint. Initially, the initial science behind it, the initial peer-reviewed studies out of Australia with the touch transfer DNA, how they discovered it was DNA within a fingerprint. And when they were studying it, immediately they found out there was this phantom effect with this touch transfer. They said, like, even if you're going to dabble with this, it's not 100%, and you better have it inside an identifier. So I think the police weighed so heavily on the knife, on the touch transfer DNA, because it was on the knife sheath themselves, which I think they're going to try to obviously prove with Bryan Kohberger's. But there was also blood on there, unidentified blood. So if that was on the murder weapon, that would have qualified for CODIS as well. If it was a mix, but even mixed, I don't know, you know. And then the third place I would assume would qualify for CODIS is the blood print on the handrail. And I'll say this for one reason. And this might be why the police are saying, and I'm sorry if I'm like yelling at the screen, I should probably take it down a notch. This might be why they're saying Dylan didn't see the victim running up and down the stairs. But to me, if Dylan saw somebody running up and down the stairs and there's a bloody handprint on the railing of the stairs, wouldn't that be in the crime scene as well, qualified for CODIS? And if the crime scene, I would think the entire crime scene on the second floor and even DM running down to, and I think the entire house is the crime scene, but it shows the path. It shows the path that the unaliver was going. So, I mean, I don't know. I just would say when it comes to the qualifications of CODIS, those would be the curious questions that I have. And yeah, I'm a little over caffeinated. Sorry.
No, you're good. I have the same things going through my head, except for I have a few things. How do they know it's there? It was an unidentified male DNA if they haven't done some testing. Okay, they tested and then they told them to stop. So in other words, it had been sent in or hadn't been sent in. I'm actually curious because that whole thing is just a little confusing for me. And one was touch DNA, and the other one was blood DNA. Are they you can't tell me in any court case that touch DNA is going to be more important than blood DNA ever. There's no way. But in terms of submitting it to CODIS and having them test it, is it the same?
And I agree with you. I agree with you heart and soul on that. And you know, I'm going to throw something else out there for both of you to kind of ponder and then obviously give me your thoughts and your opinions about is we know that there was an original suspect that was being watched. One, I would like to know what led them to believe they needed to monitor that suspect to the point they followed this individual to collect DNA from them. So it's going to be very interesting. Will we ever know what in their mind was so interesting about this individual that led them to follow him? And then once they collected that DNA, if they haven't tested the other DNA in the home, like the blood, like the other DNA samples that were potentially found, then how did you rule them out? How do you compare those? Why did you collect that cigarette if the only thing you were going to compare it to is potentially the knife sheath, but you're already working IgG on the knife sheath. So why are you worried about that? Because the IgG is obviously going to come back. I mean, they didn't have Bryan Kohberger's DNA prior to that, so
Well, what they said is they were told to stop working on it, correct? Or is that Othram? Like Othram was told to stop working on it. So they did submit several samples, but only one they were authorized to continue working on, and that was Brian's. Supposedly, allegedly Brian's. I believe. Is that correct, or am I incorrect on that?
no. And Othram was working on the knife sheath sample, but
Yeah. So the other ones,
Kiki, right? I'm going to throw it to you, Kiki, because
Mhm.
they've made the statement that they were not investigating or testing the blood on the handrail or any of those other samples. So, what do you feel as though they compared the cigarette butt to DNA wise outside of just the knife sheath? Or is that all they compared anything to was the holy grail of a knife sheath? They didn't care about anything else in the home? Nothing?
Okay. So I think that okay, the first thing is that I feel like we're not getting the whole story on this. And I'll tell you well, let me address your questions first. The first thing is the part that I didn't understand when they were talking about this is Payne's testimony most recently when he's like, well, you know, we thought we'd hold on to them in case we needed them later. And again, it goes back to public safety and lack of understanding as a citizen what the heck is going on. What do you mean later? Like, when would there be a more pressing time other than the largest manhunt in the US? Like, is there a more important, like, what's later? Like, what could be more qualifying than a nationwide manhunt to upload to figure out who the unidentified DNA was? Now, as far as uploading it, we can't say that they didn't do anything with it, because the reason we know about it is Bickle Barlow's declaration when she's like, yeah, I saw these other, I think it was 4 unidentified DNAs. I need them for my discovery process. And she was told she was denied them. And so that's where things got like really suspicious to us. Now, we did see the answer from the prosecution answer the defense and say, yeah, we'll give you copies of these identified DNAs. So I'm assuming the defense got them, but I don't know. And one of the more perplexing things, again, I'll have to give credit to Mikey for providing me with these with receipts. But when we look at the billing to Othram, it appears they only processed the IgG there. I don't see the billing for the other DNA samples. So did Othram process the raw DNA samples, or is there another lab that's been, are we not seeing everything? Did the FBI process this at their own lab? Like, who processed the raw data? Why wasn't that investigated through investigative genetic genealogy? And I do believe it was uploaded to CODIS. Did they, I just don't know. We just don't know. We don't know where they took this. It's a very open-ended question. I hope I answered yours.
And it was intentionally done that way. No, you did a great job. Boots, you wanna chime in? And you're on mute. I'll let you know that before you start talking.
Thank you. Sorry. Um, I think the big issue is that the defense needs to somehow bring out the fact that and make a really big point in saying that they asked them to stop working on the samples and just concentrate on the one, because other ones were uploaded at first. Is correct? Am I
Yes.
right?
According to
believe
Bill Barlow, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that is, personally, I don't know Idaho law, but there's got to be some law behind it somewhere. I don't know why there are certain things I'm just really concerned, very concerned, that should be being made a bigger deal of, and then looked into and announced by the defense or put in motion by the defense. And I'm seeing all of these things. Granted, the IGG is most likely, the judge hasn't approved it yet, I don't believe, but they've agreed to not use it. Now, what are they going? I don't trust that personally. They're going to twist that in some way and find some way, because that we all know in reality, that's where the tip came from. But what else are they going to use?
I agree. I'm gonna bring some up real quick because I want to utilize this document in this discussion because I think it's important. Let me make sure I'm bringing up the right one. I've been known to bring up stuff and start talking about like I know what I'm doing, and then I have no idea. So let me make sure I'm doing this correctly. But this is, to me, it's interesting. And this is the motion in limine to where both the defense and the prosecution has agreed to the IGG being excluded at trial. But what I find to be just interesting about this is how the defense literally boxes them in with a very simple part of this document. I want to make sure that
I have the same one up, so I know exactly.
Okay. So, I really, I see that they're, now I'm echoing, so it's probably me having this up, and I apologize about that. But in its papers, the state says it can present evidence of a generic tip without revealing the source or substance of that tip. Mr. Kohberger welcomes this agreement and asks the state at that point, this is what I find so interesting, identify the specific witness who will testify and the testimony that will be given. Since this testimony will be sanitized for presentation to the jury to avoid the IGG process, it must also not falsely suggest that there was any other evidence or tip that led the state to Mr. Kohberger. And what I find so important about that shows me, and Taylor just boxed in the prosecution because it's clear as day. The IGG is how they got to Bryan Kohberger. That's what led them directly to Bryan Kohberger. No doubt about it. The defense is clearly acknowledging that. They're stating that. But now they want to know, okay, we'll go with this. You could use that tip idea. Sure. Just tell us who's going to take the stand and what they're going to testify to that doesn't come back to IGG.
You just rounded back to the beginning of this live.
Right. I did that.
That's why everything else is starting to become more important now. The timing records, the other, everything but the DNA. I mean, I just think that was, look over here. And it fuels the media. It fuels the rumors, everything else.
How do you think about that, Kiki? I mean, exactly. I mean, what she's saying. I mean, this all is going to lead back to the fact that the prosecution doesn't quite have the evidence it says it has with the strength that it's portraying it to be, because we know the IGG led them to Bryan Kohberger. They don't have the records that they should have. They should absolutely have those records. I don't care what anybody says. They should have those AT&T timing records, and they don't.
Mm-mm.
So how do you present, Kiki, at that point, at trial, how you got to Bryan Kohberger?
Well, I mean, I have different opinions on this because I'm going to just go back to what Moto Max said. He left by the way, he left a $5 super chat. So I want to say thank you for that. But his comment kind of summarizes a little bit of my sentiment on this one. He says, is Judge Hippler just letting the prosecution have all the rope they want to hang themselves with? And to me, from like my thank you for displaying that. So for me, from like my just layman standpoint on this, it does feel that way, because if we remember, if for those following the case, the defense kept saying in all of the hearings under oath, we still don't know how the state got to our client. They kept saying the same. The Jay Logston came out in December, and it was the first time we heard the defense concisely say the state got to our client via investigative genetic genealogy testing. And it was reiterated in paperwork we saw coming up in those, in the January 23rd and 24th hearings. The thing is that I, as an observer of this case, don't buy that. And I know that part of the strategy when it comes to these legal proceedings is they don't have to tell you exactly the truth or exactly what's going on. It's literally a strategy. And so to me, I do believe they got to Bryan Kohberger before the 19th of December. And I don't believe that it was through investigative genetic genealogy unless there's something I don't know. And I will tell the audience really quickly the things that make me think that. The first one, we have Christy Gonzalez saying she heard Bryan Kohberger's name on the 13th. That's number one. Number two, we've got Chief Fry pulling up to the crime scene with a U-Haul that says Pennsylvania across it on the 12th of December, before the IGG, meaning that maybe they had their eye on somebody in Pennsylvania, and that wouldn't be suspicious on its own. But everyone following the case was like, wait a second, 4chan must be real. That must be something to suss out the 4chan suspect, because just a week earlier, 4chan stated that the suspect was hiding out in the shitty foothills of the Pocono Pines, Pennsylvania, or something along those lines. That's where Bryan Kohberger was found. So it makes me think it was law enforcement interjecting themselves into this case. Now, we know there were no warrants to 4chan, so it's not like they were looking for a suspect there. It's kind of, to me, obvious that was an investigative tool. So the point is that they likely, to me, had Bryan Kohberger's name before. And then we see this language about a witness when it comes to the Amazon account. Now, here's the very last thing I will bring to you, which makes my suspicions that maybe the defense is just trying to get the prosecution to lock in on their story so that they can prove it wrong. Allegedly, within a week after the crime, there was a grand jury that convened, for a federal grand jury that convened. And there was over 71 subpoenas that included allegedly Bryan Kohberger's name. The reason we know about this is because Massoff in open court was requesting copies of those subpoenas. And the prosecution said, look, we're not going to give you the subpoenas. You have the scope of what's in them. And the very quote, the thing that rings in my ears still from that part of the hearing is, we need those subpoenas because we need those dates, because we need to form our timeline. And right after that, she reiterates, we still don't know how the state got to our client, and they wouldn't supply the subpoenas, meaning I don't think they wanted the defense to know the date that the federal grand jury issued those subpoenas. So anyway, and I'll stop talking now.
Oh, no, you make valid points. But really quickly, both sides now do have the timing reports. They didn't at the time, I don't believe, but they do. And I agree with everything you said. I mean, like, pretty much everything you said, very good points. The grand jury indictment is, to me, that's just huge also. And the timing of that and how quickly is just, none of that makes sense. But in my opinion, the FBI got him there. The FBI, they got the AT&T, they got the tip from the FBI, but I mean, they didn't have, supposedly, and they have to prove to the court that they didn't have Bryan's DNA at that time. The timing reports at first they claimed they are the ones that tracked him. Then it's obvious now that they got that from the FBI. So, I mean, are they going to have an FBI agent testify? That is that's something that's in my head. That's who's going to be able to substantiate that. That's the only thing that can substantiate any of their story at this point. The one they've changed it to now.
Well, I know if I come back to you, Kiki, and I'm going to ask you another question because you feel as though they got to Bryan Kohberger before the IGG results and before the 19th. We watched Brett Payne, lead detective of the case, take the stand in a hearing, being directly examined and questioned by Ann Taylor Massaw, clearly state that's how they got to Bryan Kohberger. So let me ask you, one, what do you feel as though led them to Bryan Kohberger before the 19th? But two, do you see that as a problem when trial comes, considering if Brett Payne takes the stand and says anything differently than what he has said, it's perjury? And the case can be dismissed if a lead detective of the case takes the stand and perjures himself based on evidence. You have to remember, this isn't like text messages like in other cases where a guy's saying something disrespectful to. This is directly in the court of law with the judge sitting just feet to the right of him, being questioned in a very important hearing, making a bold statement of evidence that they didn't get to Bryan Kohberger until he received the information back from the IGG. If that changes at trial, it's perjury.
I mean, AR, I'll be honest, and there's a lot of information. So if I missed this, God, I'm so sorry, and I will go back and I will reiterate. I don't recall Brett Payne precisely saying we got to Bryan Kohberger via IGG on the 19th.
It's
The
all
first
in the
time-
documents. It's all in the
Are you talking about in John Judge's court?
No.
Oh, in Hippler's court?
Suppression hearing during the closed hearing that they released the transcripts.
Gotcha.
And Taylor shredded Brett Payne on the stand to where he had to answer so many times he didn't recall, he doesn't know, he doesn't remember. But the clear as day statement he made, I did not know of Bryan Kohberger until the 19th based upon the IGG results. Clear as day stated, 100%.
Well, I mean, I think as any human knows what perjury and lying is. I mean, yes, if somebody perjured themselves on the stand, I think the case would be thrown out in that sense. That's such a huge part of it. But this is some of the questions that I have. Let's just say, let's build off what you're saying. Brett Payne says he found Bryan Kohberger on the 19th through a tip of investigative genetic genealogy. My question is this: if they found Bryan Kohberger on the 19th, then why on the 21st did WSU identify Bryan Kohberger's car and his bushy eyebrows and his suspect with the flipping of the plate? Why? Because if they had his name, wouldn't they know his car is there and have eyes on him?
But remember, Brett Payne.
That's why Gower is so interesting to me, Kiki.
Brett Payne clearly stated he didn't talk to the WSU officers in regards to Bryan Kohberger's car until after the IGG came back on the 19th. He didn't even have that conversation with WSU till after. And everybody questioned that too, saying, how the hell do you not have that conversation? And that's clearly in his testimony as well.
Well, yeah. And so, okay. So let's just say, so that's one perplexing thing. Like, how did this come about, with that little timeline? But secondary to that, we keep thinking like, well, what about, I don't know what, well, I guess I'm actually answering my own question. I'm going to stop right there because I was going to say, why didn't they question him? But I'm just recalling he left on the 15th. So either way, you know, I don't know.
I'm actually looking to
out of
see
like out of words. I've yelled so much tonight.
You guys go ahead. I'm looking for the transcript where it actually goes through all this.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, while we have a moment, I just want to take this brief natural pause in our podcast to take a moment to just thank the live chats. We've got 3 live chats going on right now. We got one on Boots channel, we got one on AR's channel, and we got one on mine. And combined, we have well over 300 people watching us live, and we have a really active live chat. The first thing I'm going to say, live chat is keeping us on point tonight. They are throwing up questions, facts. They are friendly and just inviting. And I just want to thank everybody for the positive energy and the incredible think tank that we have to help make this show tonight. Number 1. Number 2, I want to thank our mods. I've seen you more than one time, keeping the chat clean, thanking people for their generosity. And not only that, but welcoming new people into the chat who might not chat very often. So we want to say thank you so much to our mods.
Yes. Thank you, everybody.
Absolutely.
I mean, they could be anywhere else. Everyone's talking about this, and for them to choose to be here is just amazing. And I too really appreciate that.
I could, you're taking the words right out of my mouth. We know your time is so valuable. You know, you could be anywhere on a Saturday night, but you're here with us. And we just want you to know how much we love and appreciate you. And lastly, while we're thanking, we have to just say, we want to thank the viewers, everyone watching, even if you're not commenting, if you're on the replay crew right now. We just want to say, we know that a channel is just a channel. We're not our channels. A channel is a group of people, and we just want to say we are nothing without you. So thank you so much for watching us tonight. Just trying to fill dead air. I don't know if you're ready.
No, hey, you're taking the words out of my mouth. I had to grab my charger, sorry, because I can't, my technical stuff. Yeah, that's what I need to work on. Oh, he found it. So yeah, I'm like resorting to my phone at this point.
I have to say, I love your house, by the way. I'm looking at all your decorations. Beautiful. Dang.
Yeah. I already have my Mother's Day gnomes up. I'm a big gnome person.
Well, you better have them up because you are a new grandma. So
we have an amazing grandson. Oh, who has stolen my heart. My first grandchild. So I am very, very proud, Grandma.
Oh.
Definitely big congrats on that for sure.
Thank you.
Let me see if I can take this comment down off the screen. So what I have up is the transcript of the hearing from January 23rd. This is Ann Taylor, and she's about ready to question Brett Payne, who is on the stand. As you can see, it says, how do you spell your last name? Brett Payne, P, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, they're going through what they did for a living. So he was assigned lead detective after the first 24 hours in the case, which cracks me up. First time I heard Bryan Kohberger's name was December 19th, 2022. And what was that a result of, Ann Taylor asked. That was a result of investigative genetic genealogy that was being undertaken by the FBI. We had a phone call that evening, and we were told Bryan Kohberger's name. And before that, Mr. Kohberger was not on your radar? No, ma'am. Was before December 19th, was the FBI CAST team member co-located with you? Yes, ma'am. How long did that co-located with you been? I don't remember exactly, but it had been several weeks at that point. Then they talk about Nicholas Balance. So then they kind of go through that. By the time it was December 19th and you first heard of Bryan Kohberger's name, had you reviewed videotapes? Yes, ma'am. How many hours? I don't remember a lot. I can't give you an accurate representation. So they go through that, and then they talk about the cameras of the King Road and the footage and the stuff of that nature. Down here, they come back to the WSU.
I'm following along with you here.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to get down.
No, you're good.
Where they talk to, I mean, obviously they're describing within this the collaborative work with the other officers and the FBI and stuff of that nation. And then they ask him about Othram Laboratories when he first knew about that. And he explains, how that process in his knowledge transpires.
There, I see what you're talking about right here on 14.
What is it now? 14.
The sample was sent to the FBI. I don't remember the date it was given over to them.
Right.
First red flag. But after that, there were very few conversations. Basically, but see, he never stated a date that it was given over to the FBI. They got back to them on the 19th.
Right.
So
I'm trying to find where they talk about the WSU.
Well, and that's the thing. Gower, as far as what I know, what I remember, and I could, from what I remember, Gower gave them the tip shortly after because he was driving the girls home, and he was also lived 1,300 yards from Kohberger, and knew he had that car, and submitted the tip to the FBI directly. Is that correct? Maybe someone can correct me if that's not correct, but that, and I mean, I'm not going to bring up the other BK, but
Okay, so I have to address this just simply for my confusion on the matter, and I'll tell you my two sources of confusion with that statement. The first one is Eric Gower. If it's the Eric Gower that we've all researched, that we know about, I don't believe he lives in Pullman. I believe he lives in Moscow. That's the first question.
That confuses me as well. You're right.
The second question I have about that is the source that actually reported that, I mean, could it have been just somebody interjecting themselves into the case because we only saw it from one interview? Or is it because the case got immediately sealed? I don't know the answer. I'm just bringing it to you, my audience. Wait, someone said Eric Gower never lived near Bryan.
See, that's the thing. I believe it was the interview that he did, that he said he lived there, that he lived 1,300. I remember 1,300 yards. It just sticks in my head. And he would, I don't know. You know what? I'm going to go after this, and I'm going to look, and I'm going to try to find that interview if it hasn't been scrubbed already. But
I know where you can find it, actually. I heard, because someone just brought it up the other day. Bubbly Waters, and I don't know this for a fact. Somebody told me in Discord that Bubbly Waters has the interview on her channel.
Awesome.
So maybe
she's great.
Yeah, Bubbly. I just have to say, I feel like Bubbly is kind of like our Idaho, in a way, like our Idaho historian.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like
agree.
like an obscure fact I'm looking for. She has systematically, for now years, documented all of these little social happenings between the university, the fraternities, both universities, the community, the police force. Anyway, shout out to Bubbly Waters, and I'll shut up.
Yes, shout out. Chris Martinez and Pullman. I will look at that. I don't know who wrote that right now. Buchanan. He said that particular interview is Christian Martinez in Pullman.
Oh, it's Christian Martinez. I forgot about that.
I did too.
So, I mean, I don't know. There's another reason I could think why that interview didn't pop up somewhere else is because it looks like Christian Martinez, let's just face it, might have been under contract with Howard Bloom. Just saying. Possibly speculation, in my opinion.
That's a whole other frustration I have, but okay. That should never have been allowed. That was,
Well, think about it, guys. If The Night Comes Falling is coming out and it's strategically meant to be released when those trials were happening in May to get the most kick out of it, because there's going to be a second book, obviously, at trial, likely speculation, in my opinion. Wouldn't you probably have one of the star people you're featuring in the book? Because remember, Martinez was the whole chapter about the pool party and the girl with the thong and the tattoo and the pink hair and the blah, 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 and the DJ.
yep.
Wouldn't you put an NDA on him? Don't go talk to any more papers. You're exclusively giving me
Okay.
this pool party.
That
story.
is completely true because I've been through that. That is absolutely 100%.
Thank
He
you.
can't. Like that's why we stopped my old channel like back. Same thing happened with us. We weren't allowed to speak on it for a certain amount of time. Yep.
And I can totally see.
I'm sorry.
No, I was good. I was validating what you said. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's very possible. And yes, he is a fiction writer. I just read that comment. However, obviously people ran with that and used it as, because they use it as fact. It's really crazy that they're even allowed to do that when a jury pool hasn't been selected. It's crazy.
I can't think of many cases where literally books and movies are being planned before you even get to the speedy trial hearing, or you even work into the suppression motions or anything, especially in a case. Look, I haven't seen a case this gag ordered ever in the history of cases. Legitimately, I just think so much misinformation came out from the very get-go that everybody tried to work into what's reality, what's not reality. How can we talk about this? And the sad thing about it now, even though some of the stuff that's coming out today is proving that some of the thoughts and theories were right and they were true. I mean, many came out and said that the girls were not asleep and they were text messaging. So that's proven to be real. But I mean, the legitimacy of, the majority of the things that are coming out now are far different than what we've discussed through the time of this trial. And to think somebody made money off of books and propaganda. Howard Bloom has some of his stuff probably somewhat close, but
Maybe.
But then there's so much that has missed the bullseye by worlds of area. But the sad thing about it is even the things that he potentially has close to the right only shows you that people were willing to speak behind the scenes, and I guarantee you they got paid for it. I guarantee you.
Oh, for sure.
They made money off of the information they gave as well, because that's how these things work. That's how these things work.
All right. Well, I mean, I just want to build off what Boots started to say when she first was talking about Howard Bloom, and she was saying, well, he's a fiction writer. Well, one other thing we know about Howard Bloom from his resume at the New York Times is he's two other types of writers as well. He's also a biased opinion analyst. He is also a hit piece writer. And that's not my opinion. You guys,
I know.
If you look at Howard Bloom's history, I mean, just look at him tearing down another group of young 20-year-olds in the 80s, the Brat Pack.
Yeah.
Let's just remember Howard Bloom has this special unique, which is his tolerance for cringe. And if somebody has a tolerance for cringe, they might not mind reporting on salacious things or we see the context now, the mini, and other writers. He's not the only one. We have Patterson coming out with, we have mini series, and we have
that upset me greatly because I used to read him, but
and I'm not fully, and I don't want to sit here and pick apart Howard Bloom. I have other issues. I don't, with him, but the one thing I will point out is when you get to this point in your career where you lose your you lose your ability to cringe. You do certain things. And one of the things that bothered me about that book, because I did a full book review on it when it came out, was the chapter when Bryan was driving home with his father, because he's a descriptive writer and he's a talented writer. I definitely will give Howard Bloom that. But when you're describing the scene and driving back, there's so many things you can describe, but he chose to describe the thoughts of Bryan Kohberger's father in what was allegedly categorized as a nonfiction book. And, you know, as a spiritual woman, I do not believe that that's ethical. And
I don't either.
Anybody can read your thoughts except God. And I did get bothered by that part, because, you know, there's, with your talent, with your writing skill, you can describe anything and you could paint any sort of spooky, crazy picture you want. You don't have to do that, because
you don't have to hurt a person to the point like that is going to further his chances of being unalived. And that's just wrong. I mean, his life is on the line too. And people seem to forget that a lot, in my opinion. The part where I literally could not even stomach most of it. By the time he said, well, he was in his car and he was methodically thinking about going and not going. And that's, you know, sitting in his car, contemplating everything. Like, no, you don't do that to a real living person who's facing trial for his life. It was very unethical to me as well. I agree with you completely, Swamp.
Thank you. And I mean, it's like, it's weaponizing an incredible skill, because you can't say that Howard Bloom doesn't know how to write to move the masses, because he does. And he's also has the life experience on how to place these stories at the key pivotal moments in the case to get the most views and clicks and read out of it. But lastly, I want to bring up the point that AR brought up, which is the secrecy in gagging and redacting of the case, and how AR, well, I've never seen this in the history of all cases. Well, the one point I will bring up is, I can't understand, in this constitutional republic where our justice system is supposed to be the example for the rest of the world, where there isn't a system that works like this in this form of transparency, why are they sealing, gagging, and redacting to this level something that's not a national security issue? Because that is the only time our rights to this transparency should be swept under the rug. And we should all, as Americans, understand that there are certain things that our government do, but not for a private citizen. And I'm not saying there isn't a need for it, but what I am saying is it's back to the public safety issue. Now, 2.5 years later, the panic if I lived in Moscow, I would be completely panicked until somebody showed me that there aren't unknown perpetrators out there that they're ignoring just to get one conviction.
Yeah, I agree. You are right on. We're on the same page. 100%. I've never seen, and you know, I have seen some. I'm sure you too. I mean, we've been exposed to some horrific cases involving children, cases involving a lot. Why this case all of a sudden? It doesn't make sense. It didn't make sense. And
well,
hopefully it's changing. AR, what do you think?
Well, and that's what I guess when I sit down and I'm glad I have a wife that will put up with me rambling my thoughts out, just trying to talk things out. She sits there shaking her head going, God, are you mumbling again? But I'm thinking to myself, I've sat, unfortunately, with a lot of defendants in my day, because they were all found guilty and ended up in the same place I did. So, of course, reading the paperwork, listening to the stories, having discussions of what trend. To think that this case was gag ordered before Bryan Kohberger even made it back from Pennsylvania almost. I mean, I guess the gag order went in right after he got back, but why? Why is
Well,
this
to be fair,
case?
the attorneys agreed on it, I believe.
Yeah, but why? Like
Good, but that's what I want to know.
a judge should step in and say, because look, there are sick crimes that happen in this country every single day. Ones
Mm.
that involve far more damage um, to like children of very young ages. It's just such hard things to present to the masses that you would think those cases would be gagged and redacted and sealed. One of the prime examples that I remember was a gentleman in Arizona. He was known as the baseline rapist. His name was Mark Godot, and he was going through the court process about the same time I had to come back to court. And this gentleman, unfortunately, a lot of his victims were underage little girls, and they were sickening crimes. Sickening crimes. Not a moment of that case was gag. Not a moment of it. And there were 18 or 20 victims. I don't remember how many it was. He's on death row now.
What state was that in, if you don't mind me
Arizona.
asking?
Arizona.
Okay,
You can look it
sorry.
up. Mark Godot.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And sickening crimes.
Mhm.
And not a word of it was gagged. I mean, I'm watching like the Luigi Mangione case. That case isn't going to be gagged. Already, most of the information's already out there.
Isn't that insane?
But you're
Like,
looking
I
at
don't understand. It's insane in contrast to this case. This just, why? I mean, the
Well,
attorneys are the ones who agreed. Why would they agree on that?
but what's so, well, it's got to be something with the IGG. But what's so frustrating at the tail end of it, and look, I don't advocate for anybody in this case. Like, I don't stand on anybody's, hind tails and say I support, because I don't at this point, because it's all so wild across the board. I can't, but Steve G has made it quite clear he did not want this hidden or gagged, and his daughter was one of the people that lost their lives.
Exactly.
He's even screaming, we need transparency. We need this to be out in the public eye. Bryan Kohberger and his defense team seemed like they were screaming the same thing, yet they're still redacting and gagging things. I mean, it's nuts to me. It's just, this is a case that should have played out in front of everybody to see. The transparency should have been right from the very beginning. Nothing should have been hidden. It would have nipped all of this tinfoil hat, spinning all over the place crap. Plus, it would have put into perspective, and this is something that I've thrown my hat on this since day one. We should have seen how exactly the procedure was taken by law enforcement to conduct this investigation, so that we would have step by step understood it, and that would protect us as citizens from the FBI being able to break their own protocols and procedures to be able to run tests to get to suspects. We need all of this in plain view. Just spell it all out, throw it out there. This is what we as taxpayers, this is what we as voters deserve. And for some reason, we're not given that.
I agree. Can one of you read Motomax's comment? I can't because I'm on the tech stuff.
That one?
Yeah.
I'll read it. It says, I believe this case was sealed because BK was under investigation with the FBI prior to the murders, or was sealed to protect the university's reputation. And I just will say, when we talk about the federal grand jury subpoenas, you guys, this has to be a federal crime. Whatever Bryan Kohberger's name was in those 71 federal grand jury subpoenas, Bryan Kohberger was investigated for something not to do with this murder.
Exactly.
It's a federal crime. It has to be something. I mean, it has to be a federal crime. I mean, just think what that could involve. Could it be something with just hypotheticals here?
The other BK is the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
my wife and I
financial
were,
crimes. I'm sorry.
my wife
I'm
and I
sorry.
were, no, I'm sorry, Swamp. I just
Oh,
wanted to jump in on Boots. My wife and I have had that discussion time and time again, and I'm still telling you, I've got this in the back of my head. Brent Kopaka connects to this case in some way. I don't know what it is. I'm not saying he committed it. I'm not saying he had involvement. I don't know what it is.
Somehow I think the same thing. It just
He either
scares me.
knows one of the victims in some way, and they wanted to protect the fact that he knows them, and they didn't want blame put on him. But that's a shaky situation that happened
Mhm.
with a SWAT situation that will never be explained appropriately. We'll never know the answer to that.
Mm-mm.
But I get it. Like I keep telling my wife, there is something there to that man's name that they're protecting, and that doesn't mean like he walked into that home with a K-bar knife and committed this
No,
crime.
but
But it does make
I completely agree with that because it stays in the back of my mind too for some reason. I mean, it just does.
well,
When we
it's
ask
just
that question, and we all of us ask that question.
I just think of
Okay,
the craziness of that. You're watching body cam of a traffic stop of Bryan Kohberger in a state halfway across the country,
yeah.
and whose name comes out of their mouth. Isn't that just odd? Like, really?
We all want to know how he's the one sitting in the defendant's chair right now.
Well, and I just wonder, like, okay, my mom and I used to drive long distances because my mom didn't like to drive and I loved to drive. So we would take off and go on long drives when I was younger. We didn't really have many conversations about somebody that got swatted in the local city we lived at 2 days prior to us driving or during our drive. Not to the police who just pulled us over, especially not to the police that potentially just pulled us over twice in 10 minutes. Like now we're starting to wonder why you're pulling us over. And me with my big mouth would be like, do you have a freaking problem with my car? Do you have something to why you keep pulling? Not, hey, by the way, did you know this guy at WSU that got swatted? Uh, there's just something there. There's something there.
Man,
I
I
didn't mean to
think
cut you guys off.
no, you didn't. I think I know I do. I completely value that thought, and I actually agree with that as well. And it also implicates, in my opinion, the Kopaka situation also implicates law enforcement. So I hate to say that out loud, but I just said it. You know, that could be a big reason for all the secrecy.
I agree. Can I just respond to this real quick and then Kiki, it's your floor. Um, Catherine S. is one of my favorite people in the world. She's one of my biggest supporters and has stood by me through thick and thin. And she's also been around and educated me and got into my mind when I was going through a situation of a little drama and an up and down situation within me. And I appreciate you. I mean, that's obviously a sign of respect when somebody says you should collaborate with somebody because that kind of puts me on an equivalent level of speaking capability, thought processing, and I appreciate that. I really, really do. And I know Jay Embry and Pavarotti is highly respected by many on the platform, and many enjoy his content. My only answer to this is I don't hate anybody. I definitely don't hate anybody
Yeah.
I don't personally know. And I don't hate him for his success on the platform. There's no hate involved. I just, I don't absolutely agree with the theory or the concepts what he thinks happens, which is fine. We don't all have to agree. We don't have to be on the same page. And that's what makes it so unique. I will just continue to respect him from afar, so there's never a potential of drama again. I will stop everything prior to drama happening, and that allows him to continue to do the work that he's doing without worrying about me, and it allows me to pretend to do the work I'm doing without him worrying about me. So I appreciate you making that statement, and I'm just going to stay in my lane and do my thing, and I definitely appreciate though that you think I'm capable enough to. But you know what? I guess the best answer. Let's be real about this answer. Who would trade me doing a live with someone like Pavarotti when I can get two hot women on panel with me and do a live with true beauties rather than two men? I mean, come on. Let's be real about this.
Mom, show your face right now.
Sorry, Pav. I'm just kidding. You're so charming. So
I feel so grateful to be here with both of you. I've been watching both of you for a really long time. It took me a long time to even come out with my opinion on a lot of this, because to temper sensitivity for the people involved with the way sometimes I can dig, and the fact that we didn't have, and we still don't at all have the whole picture or even close to it. It's hard. I don't want to assume and hurt somebody, but at this point, this is what it is. And I'm so grateful that I have two people that are just as respectful about the whole situation, but realistic. I just love your point of view on things, and Swamp Rose, you're amazing. And the chat tonight, all the chats have just been so great. I'm so impressed. Like, no arguing. I mean, there's no reason to argue. There's no reason to do this. We should learn from everybody. Take what you that applies to you and leave the rest. You don't have to hate. This can be a great community, and this particular one is really amazing.
Thank you so much. I totally agree with your sentiments, and it's a pleasure meeting you and being on panel with you tonight. I want to know if I could go back and answer this question about Kopaka you guys were talking about real quick. We were just talking about Kopaka. So the first thing I want to say, I want to give two sides to this story. Now, the first thing is I am comfortable bringing Kopaka up, because we didn't come up with the Kopaka interjection into this case. Bryan Kohberger's father, just like you said, Bryan Kohberger's father is the one who brought Kopaka's name into this case. That's why we talk about it, is because during the drug interdiction stops, he brought up Kopaka's name. Now, the fact that he brought it up, like, I do understand that was socially awkward and probably random, but here's the thing, the way that I feel about that is December 15th, 2022, I was thinking about that standoff at WSU. I was following this case from afar, and I know this was the #1 news story in the US. It was also very likely the #1 news story in the Northern Hemisphere. It was the largest murder. It was the largest manhunt in the world at that time. And the fact that Kopaka, 10 minutes away, was involved in a allegedly, trigger warning here, allegedly suicide by cop, police standoff with SWAT teams surrounding the entire WSU campus. It's only 10 minutes from where they're having the largest manhunt in the world. I do believe that he was trying to say, they were asking him, where were you coming from? And he's saying WSU. And I think what the father was saying, on the news where that standoff is right now with the largest freaking manhunt in the world, 10 minutes from there. I think that's what he was saying is like, look, we're getting alerts. And the guy's like, well, where are you from? He's like, oh, I'm from WSU. Where that big standoff is going on right now that everybody in the world is watching. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's how it got entered. So I'm trying to give both sides of the story. I see where Bryan Kohberger's father brought it up. It makes sense why he would use that as a way to explain to the officer where they're coming from when he asked. Second, I honestly don't feel, I don't want to drag a veteran's name through the mud. We don't want to add things that aren't there. But for me to bring up his name, I will not feel shame or guilt for that because it was by the accused own's father. And we've all seen it on tape. And the other point I want to bring up was from Rollo. Rollo, thank you for reminding me.
Rolo's had some good comments tonight.
Rollo always thinks outside the box, and I really appreciate him bringing this up. It was when I was talking about Howard Bloom, something else I left out when I was talking about Howard Bloom being a biased and hit piece journalist. When this is all allegedly, in my opinion, and speculation, but allegedly when Michael Jackson fired Bloom for his writing, that's when the hit pieces started coming out on Michael. And you remember those hit pieces, there was, for whatever you believe, when that barrage hit the media, and I'm probably if you were following media back then, maybe if you remember, I don't remember it all, but from what I can get, when that barrage hit the media, Michael Jackson was formally going to war with Virgin Records and Tommy Mottola. He called him the freaking devil on stage.
I didn't even know he did that. I didn't even know he was the person who wrote that. Oh, wow. That is crazy.
And so that's when Michael Jackson started getting taken out. I did a whole video. If you guys go back and you look at my reporting with Candace Owen, when I first was covering the Diddy case, and we were talking about the connections between Diddy and Michael Jackson, that's when I played the lost footage that came out of Michael. He was on stage saying, I'm going to do it. And they're like, don't do it. Don't do it. He's like, I'm going to do it. He's like, Tommy Mottola is the devil. And he was going to bat for his music. And that's what Rollo was saying, is that's when he had fired Bloom. And allegedly that's when all this writing anti-Michael Jackson shit came out and all of the main newspapers. Remember, the New York Times in the 90s was the paper of record.
Yeah.
I'll stop preaching now.
No, keep preaching. You're good.
And I do want to give Rollo a shout out.
I was just about to do that in chat, so thank you.
There are creators here in the chat. We're always privileged and blessed to have them join us, Boots, and I'm sure many of them as well. So, for those of you out there that have an open mind and want a unique perspective and a different view of things, I would definitely recommend you check out Rollo, because he does put hard work into what he does as well. And if you're looking for that unique view and a different way of seeing things, definitely jump over and give him a watch. Miss Potts has been in and out of our chat. She is amazing. She does a lot of work within the documents. And like I've said with Swamp, and I'll let you know, Boots, too. One thing about hers, I love the personality. I love the strength that she showcases within, her delivery of her content. So for those that really want a strong voice and a good presentation of belief and thoughts, I absolutely recommend Miss Potts. And there's so many that are in and out of the chat. I could name so many of the reason why, you should watch them. And I can't get everybody's name out there, but, I am a big supporter of overall the voices being utilized, because I think it brings more attention to the very cases that need that attention. So any unique view, as long as it's not disrespectful or literally doing damage to the case or the people involved in the case, I support. So that's just how I feel.
Yeah, this was great. The conversation is amazing. and I like how this was good. I'll just say that. This is a
Well,
really good. This is really good.
I definitely would love to work with you again. I'm sure Kiki is open minded, would love to do it as well. And you know, I want to thank both of you ladies for spending a good portion of your Saturday with me, as I know you both have lives as well. But I'm thankful of both of you. I enjoy it. I like working with both of you, and I definitely would love to do it again. Kiki, I have to admit, Boots, Kiki and I have formed a really good bond, not
Mhm.
only here on the platform, but we're like brother sister off of this platform.
I love
And
that.
you know, I truly care about Kiki. She means a lot to me, and really, this endeavor for me in YouTube has become a joint effort with her to bring the best content that we could possibly do and keep it respectful. And then we obviously have bigger visions of what we could do more than just the Idaho 4. But you were definitely, Boots, someone that I could very well see myself and hopefully Kiki working with as well moving forward. I love your thought. I love your respectfulness. I love the way you present it. So I'm just I'm thankful for you as well. So
Thank you both. Thank you. And I echo all that.
thank you.
Every
Thank
word.
Yeah, I don't even know if I could summarize the sentence as well as you just did, but I also want to say I feel like you're my brother too, and family to me, Aaron. I appreciate that. And Bootsy, I've really enjoyed the conversation and being up here and hearing all of your unique takes on it, things that we haven't heard because I haven't been on panel with you before. But I do want to say that the strength to do something like this, like the AR was saying, I'm literally on this platform because AR gives me that extra strength behind the scenes. And also my community, this community here, I just have to say how special you are. This true crime community is so important. You're keeping people like freaking Nancy Grace and Ashley Banfield on their toes. They're answering to you. They're triggering, they're making triggering videos for this community because you guys are so good at keeping the mainstream media on their toes, at least in this case that I follow with you. And I would say I draw my strength from this community because I take a lot of shit. And I will say, if it weren't for this community, I couldn't take a chance and come out here and try to be a citizen journalist and try to be curious about things and report on them to a group of people. So I just want to say thank you. Also, aside from, you know, my true crime family extends to the viewers here too. And we just appreciate it. We draw so much strength and energy from you.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you, everybody. All of us. It's so amazing. Everybody here is, for the most part. But I mean, overall, amazing. And the goal, I think, is to see the right thing being done in society. And that's really special and unique. We're not driven by money, and we're not driven by personal. I mean, obviously, if we were driven by something personal, it's obvious when people are. And I'm grateful that I'm part of it. And
all right,
I
I'm
would
cutting you off. I'm here for the
please do.
super chats, the membership, the donations, the cash apps, the pay. Oh wait, I don't have.
Oh, wait a second.
Hold on a minute. No, um, ladies. I mean, I couldn't say it any better than the both of you did. We've been going on almost 3 hours,
Oh
so I
Lord.
think
Oh my
what we
goodness.
ought to do is save it and our expertise. I'm going to call it expertise for another show here very soon to where we can get on and discuss many, many more things. And I can't wait to showcase the beauties on my arms, one on each side. And maybe we can even get my wife to join this too, to where she can come up on panel with us as well and
Yeah.
share some of her thoughts. And then I can know I'm the lone wolf male of the panel.
No, you know what?
I'm gonna let you two kind of say what you want to say to not only your subscribers, your communities, as we wind this down for the night, and then we'll say our goodbyes, and we'll do it again.
Why don't you take the floor, Bootsy? Why don't you go first?
Just everybody who showed up and showed out and was kind and respectful and engaged, and this was a very thoughtful conversation tonight, and I learned a lot, and I got to speak and bouncing ideas off the chat is amazing. You don't get that you don't get that very often. And I just want to thank everybody for being respectful, being here, and I can't wait to do this again.
Bootsy. And I just want to say first off, it's so nice to meet someone new and have someone new on panel. Thank you for everything you brought to it too, and giving me some new food for thought. And I did learn a few things tonight that I really appreciate. I also learned more about the paperwork and all the new documents, and I really appreciate that. I want to take a quick moment to thank my Discord server. I have a great little community on Discord, and it's really becoming a place where I can really read people's ideas and their impressions of these different cases. And it's nice because it's kind of like I get a sampling of what the public might think in my own little server. So just thank you to my Discord server. Thank you to my researchers. Thank you to my mods for keeping my chat so awesome tonight. It was active, and I loved everything you guys had to say, and it was so respectful. Thank you so much. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I want to thank the viewer. I really want to thank you. We know that a channel is not a person. It's a group of people, and we are nothing without you. So thank you for your time and listening to what we have to say. And we would ask nothing of you, but if you did enjoy this content, we would love if you considered subscribing to my channel, Boots' channel, and AR's channel. We try to, at least between the three of us, put out some sort of content daily. And at the very least, we're going to try in these 4 months before trial to really keep you up to date, so that when our viewers go into trial, there isn't confusion and they can clearly know what they're looking at. And the world is watching. And this true crime community is making a huge difference in the coverage of this case. Look no further than the Cashmere Sweater twins, Howard Bloom and Kelly, what's her face? Megan Kelly. Cashmere Sweater twins. You're making
Cashmere Sweater twins.
You wouldn't see that, So anyway, I'll stop now. Thank you so much.
Perfectly stated.
So I'll put it up on here. This is a good way to end the live. Nothing left to lose. YouTube is investigating me, A.R. Hayes, for fraud and conspiracy. Well, okay. Here I sit. I mean, if I'm being investigated, let me be investigated. I've committed no fraud. I have no conspiracy, but I appreciate that, Thomas, and whatever that may come from. But I'm going to go ahead and say I appreciate both of you ladies, and I will, in my description of this live, I will have the link when it's all said and done. I will put Bootsy's link for you to be able to subscribe to her channel. I will have Swamp Rose's link in my description as well. So if you guys could do me the favor, please go over and hit the like button on both of their channels. Give them a little recognition for the great live that they were both involved in tonight, as I enjoyed it very much. And ladies, I'm going to say goodbye to the chat, and I'm excited. Hey, I'm being investigated for fraud and conspiracy.
You know what? There's always that one, right?
Well, no, but here's the thing is like, I'm just going to say, because AR, I don't know what's going on, and I'm going to address Thomas. I'll talk to you off platform. I certainly, I've reached out to you and you've reached out to me tonight. We're going back and forth. I don't know what's going on, and I don't know, why we're addressing this on a public platform, but I will let you know that I respect Thomas, and I don't let any statement like this go without it's weighing heavy on me, and I will not let this go, and I will certainly be following up on this comment, because I do respect Thomas, and I don't know why this is being said, and what, but anyway, what I would like to do is not further comment on this and talk to both Thomas and AR off record, but I'm uncomfortable with this conversation.
Yeah, I have, and I have both of, I have your, yeah, I have
Guys,
anything.
I'm going to make this statement. I'm not uncomfortable with the conversation. I have
the drama.
I have zero worries of it. Absolutely zero worries of it. None. So that's how I'll say. I hope everybody has a great night. Bootsy, I can't wait to work with you again. Swamp Rose, as
Back
always.
at ya.
We will definitely be working again. I want to say thank you to everybody in chat. You guys all have a great night. We'll see you again soon.
Bye, everybody.
Have a safe rest of your night and weekend.